It is 3 in the morning. The world outside is asleep, but you are not. Your only companion is the cold blue light of a screen, painting your face in its pale glow as your thumb moves in a slow, hypnotic scroll. You are watching a silent theater of curated perfection, a stream of smiling faces, distant travels, celebrated achievements, and lives that seem so effortlessly complete. And in the vast, quiet space of your room, a question begins to echo, a question that perhaps you are too tired to speak aloud, but feel with a heavy certainty in your heart. Why am I not enough? Where, in all of this, is my value? This feeling, this quiet ache of inadequacy, is not a personal failure. It is not a flaw in your character. It is a symptom of our time, a quiet epidemic born from the architecture of our modern lives. We are taught, from a young age, to build, to construct a self, an identity, a personal brand that is strong, successful, and worthy of admiration. We are told to stand out, to climb higher, to achieve more. We have become tireless architects of our own ego, constantly adding new flaws, new decorations, new accolades, hoping that one day the structure will finally feel stable, that it will finally feel like home. But the chase is relentless, and it leaves us exhausted, anxious, and deeply, profoundly alone. Even when surrounded by others, we try to fill the growing emptiness with possessions, with accomplishments, with the fleeting validation of 1,000 strangers online. But the void only deepens. We are trying to fill a cup that has a hole in the bottom. But what if there is another way? What if the path to peace and self-worth does not involve adding anything more to this fragile structure? What if, instead, it involves looking deeply, with courage and with gentleness, at what is already there? There is an ancient wisdom, a path that has been walked for millennia, in quiet forests and silent halls, that offers a radically different perspective. It suggests that our value is not found in our separateness, in how brightly we can shine alone, but in our profound and inescapable connection to everything else. This wisdom teaches that the search for a separate, solid self is the very source of our suffering. The solution is not to build a better self, but to understand that the self we have been trying so hard to build is, in its own way, an illusion. This is an invitation to begin a journey inward, a journey to discover the truth of what you are, not by looking in the mirror of the world's expectations, but by seeing yourself in the rain, in the trees, in the breath of the person next to you. This is a journey into the heart of Interbeing, a truth so simple, yet so powerful. It holds the key to dismantling the prison of the ego and setting you, finally, free. Let us begin by asking the simplest and most profound question there is. Who are you? Take a moment and just listen to the answers that arise in the quiet of your mind. Perhaps your name comes first, a label given to you, a sound that you have learned to respond to. Perhaps an image appears, the face you greet in the mirror each morning, a collection of features you have come to recognize as your own. Perhaps a role surfaces. I am a mother, a son, a doctor, an artist, a student. Perhaps a nationality, a political belief, a memory of a past success or a past failure. Listen to the stories that begin to spin themselves into existence. I am the kind of person who is strong. I am someone who has been hurt. I am intelligent. I am anxious. I am searching. Each of these answers, these labels, these stories are threads woven together over a lifetime to create a rich and intricate tapestry. And this tapestry we call I. We call it me. This is the ego. It is a masterpiece of construction, built from the very first moment we understood that we were a separate being, from our mother. It is layered with the praise of our parents, the sting of a teacher's criticism, the joy of a first love, the bitterness of a betrayal. It is reinforced by every certificate on the wall, every title on a business card, every follower on a social media profile. This ego is not an evil thing. It is, in fact, a necessary tool for navigating the world. It allows you to have a name, a history, a personality. It signs contracts. It remembers birthdays. It learns from its mistakes. But the greatest misunderstanding, the one that causes immeasurable suffering, is that we have come to believe that we are this tapestry. We believe we are the story, rather than the one who is aware of the story. And because this ego is a construction, a thing that has been built, it lives in a state of constant, subtle, and exhausting insecurity. Think of a house built of cards. It may be beautiful, it may be complex, but it is inherently fragile. A slight breeze, a tremor in the table, and it can all come tumbling down. The ego is this house of cards, and because it knows, on some deep, unconscious level, of its own impermanence and fragility, it spends every moment of its existence trying to protect and reinforce itself. This is the source of so much of our inner turmoil. Its primary strategy is comparison. The ego cannot simply exist. It must exist in relation to other egos. It looks out at the world and immediately begins to measure. Am I smarter than this person? Am I less successful than that person? Is their house bigger? Is their body more attractive? Is their vacation more exotic? This constant measuring creates the twin poisons of pride and jealousy. When the ego feels superior, it puffs itself up with a fleeting sense of pride, a temporary high that quickly fades. When it feels inferior, it is flooded with the pain of envy, resentment, and the familiar ache of not being good enough. It is a game that can never be won, because there will always be someone who is, by some metric, ahead of you, and always someone behind. The ego is a hungry ghost, forever seeking and never satisfied. Its second strategy is defense. Because it is so fragile, the ego perceives any form of criticism as a mortal threat. When someone disagrees with your opinion, it does not feel like a simple difference in perspective. It feels like a personal attack, an attack on the integrity of the house of cards. And so the ego reacts, often with anger, with defensiveness, with justifications. It builds walls of righteousness around itself, shutting out anything that might challenge its story. It argues, it blames, it withdraws into a wounded silence. It does all of this not because it is malicious, but because it is terrified. This terror is the ego's deepest secret. Its greatest fear is annihilation. It is the fear of being seen as a failure, the fear of being rejected, the fear of being forgotten. The ultimate fear is the fear of death, the final dissolution of the story of me. This primal fear drives the ego to seek permanence in an impermanent world. It craves fame, power, wealth, not just for their own sake, but because it believes these things will make it solid, real, indestructible. It whispers to us that if we can just achieve that one more thing, get that one more promotion, earn that one more dollar, then we will finally be safe. We will finally be worthy. But it is a promise that can never be kept. There is a classic Zen story that speaks to this condition. A very learned scholar, a man who had read hundreds of books and could debate philosophy for days, traveled a long way to visit a wise old Zen master. Upon arriving, he immediately began to speak, eager to display his vast knowledge. He spoke of metaphysics, of the nature of reality, of all the complex theories he had mastered. He was a man whose ego was built from his intellect, a magnificent and towering structure. The Zen master listened patiently, nodding, and then said, "You must be thirsty from your long journey. Let us have some tea." The master brought out a simple teapot and 2 cups. As the scholar continued to speak, the master began to pour tea into his guest's cup. He poured, and the tea reached the brim, but he did not stop. The tea overflowed, spilling out onto the saucer, and then onto the table, a hot, brown stream. The scholar, shocked out of his monologue, cried out, "Stop! What are you doing? The cup is already full. It cannot hold any more." The Zen master stopped pouring, looked at the scholar with a gentle gaze, and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This story is not just about the limits of intellectual knowledge. It is a perfect parable for the ego. We come to life, to this very moment, with a cup that is already overflowing. It is full of our beliefs about who we are, what we are capable of, what we are worth. It is so full of the story of me that there is no room for anything new to enter. There is no room for peace. There is no room for the truth of our being. So what are we to do? Is the goal to violently shatter this cup, to declare war on our own ego? This would be just another strategy of the ego itself. "I will be the one who successfully destroys my ego," it would proudly claim. The path taught by the wise is far more gentle and far more profound. It is not a path of destruction, but of observation. The instruction is not to fight the ego, but to become aware of it. You can do this right now. You can watch the ego as it operates within you. When a feeling of jealousy arises, you can observe it without judgment. You can say, "Ah, there is the mind of comparison." When you feel the need to defend an opinion, you can watch the defensiveness rise and fall like a wave. You can notice the fear that lies beneath it. When you achieve something and feel a surge of pride, you can watch that too, seeing its fleeting nature. In this simple act of observation, a miracle occurs. A space is created. Before, you were the anger, you were the jealousy, you were completely identified with the story. But when you observe it, you are no longer it. You are the observer. You are the awareness in which the ego's drama is unfolding. You are the sky, and the ego is just a passing cloud. The sky is not afraid of the clouds. It does not try to fight them. It simply allows them to come and go, remaining vast, open, and unchanged. This is the first step toward freedom, to recognize the ego for what it is, a useful but demanding servant, and a very poor master. It is the architect of the prison of insecurity that we have lived in for so long. By watching it with a kind and steady attention, we begin to find the key to our own cell. We see that the bars are made of thought, and the walls are made of stories. Having now met the architect of our unease, we must look more closely at the very materials it uses to build our world, the fundamental experience of friction and dissatisfaction that the Buddha called dukkha, the universal truth of suffering. Having seen the ego, the restless architect of our inner world, we must now look at the very foundation upon which it builds its fragile kingdoms. We must look at a truth so fundamental, so universal, that the Buddha declared it to be the very first step on any path to liberation. This is the truth of suffering. Now, the word suffering is heavy in the English language. It conjures images of immense tragedy, of deep, dramatic pain. And while it certainly includes this, the original Pali word, dukkha, is far more subtle, more nuanced, and more pervasive. It does not simply mean that life is agony. It is not a pessimistic declaration of doom. Rather, It is a compassionate and realistic diagnosis, like that of a skilled physician looking at the human condition. Think of a beautiful wooden wheel on a cart. If the axle hole is not drilled in the precise center, the wheel will still turn, the cart will still move forward. But with every rotation, there will be a subtle bump, a slight wobble, a persistent, low-grade friction. The journey will be one of constant, subtle unease. This is dukkha. It is the pervasive sense of unsatisfactoriness, the background hum of friction that underlies so much of our waking life. To understand this more deeply, the ancient teachings break dukkha down into three distinct, yet interwoven, types. The first is the most obvious, the suffering of pain, or dukkha. This is the pain of the body and the mind that we all know so well. It is the headache that throbs behind your eyes, the chronic ache in your back. It is the sharp grief that comes with the loss of a loved one, the sting of betrayal, the humiliation of failure. It is the raw, unmistakable ouch of life. When we feel worthless or rejected, the acute, sharp pain we experience is this first kind of dukkha. It is real, it is unavoidable, and it is a part of being a sentient creature in the world. The second type is more subtle, and it arises not from pain, but from pleasure. This is the suffering of change, or viparinama dukkha. It is the anxiety that is woven into every pleasant experience, because we know, deep down, that it cannot last. Think of a perfect, golden afternoon in summer, the warmth on your skin, the laughter of friends, the feeling of pure contentment. It is beautiful, but even in the midst of that beauty, there is a tiny, quiet whisper of its ending. The sun will set, the season will turn. This moment will pass into memory. The happiness we derive from a promotion at work is soon replaced by the pressure of the new role. The thrill of a new relationship is colored by the fear of it one day changing or ending. We cling to these pleasant experiences, trying to hold on to them, but our very clinging creates anxiety because life's one constant law is the law of change. The joy itself becomes a source of potential suffering because we fear its loss. This is the dukkha of watching our carefully constructed sandcastles of happiness inevitably be washed away by the tide of time. The third and most profound type of suffering is sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the deep, background hum of unsatisfactoriness that comes from the very nature of reality itself. It is the friction of the off-center axle. It is the fundamental instability of a life built upon things that are constantly changing, constantly in flux. Everything we experience, our body, our thoughts, our feelings, our world, is a compound, a coming together of various conditions. And because these conditions are always shifting, our experience is inherently unreliable. This is that feeling of something is missing, even when life is going well. It is the vague, restless striving of the ego that is never quite content, never truly at home. It is the specific suffering of our modern age. You can have a comfortable home, a stable job, good health, and still lie awake at 3 in the morning with that familiar feeling of inadequacy. That is sankhara dukkha. It is the dukkha of being a separate self, a fragile construct of changing conditions in a world of other separate selves. This very feeling of not being enough, of needing to be more, better, different, this is perhaps the clearest and most painful expression of this third type of suffering in our contemporary world. To illustrate how acknowledging this truth can be a path to healing rather than despair, there is the powerful story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She lived in the time of the Buddha and she had a young son whom she adored beyond all measure. He was the sun of her world. One day, the boy fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was consumed by a grief so absolute she could not accept it. She refused to believe her son was gone. Clinging to his small, lifeless body, she went from house to house, desperately begging for a medicine that could bring him back. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man saw her profound despair and suggested she go see the Buddha. Carrying her son, she went to the enlightened one and pleaded, "Can you give me a medicine to cure my boy?" The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "I can, but to make this medicine, I require a special ingredient. I need you to bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one and no child, no parent, no spouse, no servantess ever died." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her search anew. She went to the first house, her heart pounding. "The Buddha has sent me for a mustard seed," she said. "Can you give me one?" "Of course," the woman of the house replied. "But before I give it to you," Kisa Gotami remembered, "I must ask, has anyone in this house ever died?" The woman's face grew sad. "Oh, my dear," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind me of my deepest grief." Kisa Gotami left without the seed and went to the next house, and the next, and the next. She went to the richest mansions and the poorest huts, and everywhere the answer was the same. "My husband died last year. We lost our youngest child to fever. My parents are long gone." In every home, there was a story of loss. As the day wore on, the truth began to slowly dawn on her, not as a devastating blow, but as a quiet, profound understanding. Her grief was not hers alone. This pain, this unbearable loss, was not a unique punishment inflicted upon her. It was the common, shared fabric of human existence. She finally went to the edge of the village, laid the body of her son down gently, and said softly, "My dear little one." Her own profound understanding was the medicine. She had found what the Buddha had sent her to find, not a mustard seed from a house untouched by death, but the universal truth of impermanence and loss. In seeing her suffering as part of the great river of all suffering, her isolated, frantic grief was transformed into a deep, compassionate wisdom. This is the power of the first noble truth. To look squarely at the existence of dukkha in all its forms is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of courage and kindness toward ourselves. It is to stop fighting reality. When you are stuck in quicksand, the more you struggle and resist, the faster you sink. The first, wisest move is to relax, to accept the situation, and to lie flat. Acknowledging dukkha is this first move. It is putting down the weapons of denial and resistance. It is to stop pretending that life should be a state of uninterrupted bliss. It is to finally allow ourselves to be human. By looking honestly at this diagnosis, by admitting that the wheel of our life does indeed have a wobble, we empower ourselves. A disease that is correctly diagnosed is a disease that can be treated. If we did not know we were ill, we would never seek a cure. And so, having bravely faced the symptom, the universal truth of suffering, a hopeful and logical question naturally arises. What is the cause of this friction? If this dukkha has an origin, then perhaps there is a way to cease its arising. This leads us directly to the second noble truth, to an exploration of the very root of our deep and persistent discontent. We have stood together in the quiet truth that there is a fundamental friction in our lives, a subtle and persistent dis-ease, the Buddha called dukkha. To acknowledge this is an act of profound courage, but a wise physician having diagnosed an illness, does not stop there. They proceed to the next, most hopeful step, to find its origin. For if a condition has a cause, it can also have a cure. This is the promise of the second noble truth, known as samudaya, the origin of our suffering. The Buddha taught that the root of this deep unsatisfactoriness is not a flaw in the world, nor is it a punishment from an external power. The root is something far more intimate. It is a fire that burns within our own hearts. He gave it a name that translates not just as desire, but as thirst. The word is tanha. Imagine being lost in a desert, your throat parched, your mind consumed by a single desperate thought: water. This is tanha. It is not a gentle wishing. It is a feverish, compulsive, and restless energy. It is the deep, primal thirst of the ego, which, feeling itself to be empty and incomplete, constantly searches for something outside of itself to consume, to absorb, to make it feel whole and real. This thirst manifests in three primary streams. The first is the most familiar, the thirst for sense pleasures, kama, tanha. This is the relentless pull toward anything that gratifies our five senses. The craving for the taste of rich chocolate, the desire to lose ourselves in the melody of a beautiful song, the longing for the sight of a perfect sunset, the urge for a loving touch. It is the engine of our consumer culture, the voice that whispers, if you just buy this, wear this, experience this, you will be happy. The objects of our desire are not in themselves bad or wrong. A sunset is beautiful. Good food is a gift. The problem lies in the thirst. It is the mistaken belief that these fleeting sensory experiences can quench a spiritual thirst, that they can provide lasting satisfaction. They cannot. The pleasure fades, the hunger returns, and the thirsty search begins all over again. The second stream of thirst is deeper and more entwined with our sense of self. It is the thirst for existence, for becoming, known as bhava, tanha. This is the ego's desperate desire to be someone, to solidify its identity, to carve out a permanent and impressive place in the world. It is the insatiable hunger for status, for reputation, for power. It is the voice that says, when I get that promotion, then I will be important. When I am recognized for my talent, then I will have value. When I finally achieve that perfect body, then I can love myself. It is a thirst for a future, idealized self, a constant striving to become more, better, different. This form of tanha fuels our ambitions, our anxieties about success, and our deep-seated fear of being a nobody. It is a race with no finish line, because the moment one goal is achieved, the ego immediately sets another, forever chasing a horizon that recedes as we approach it. The third stream is the dark twin of the second. It is the thirst for non-existence, vibhava tanha. This is the desire to escape, to annihilate the self and its pain. When the striving becomes too much, when the disappointments pile up, when the friction of dukkha becomes unbearable, this thirst arises. It is the urge to numb out, to disappear. We see it in the desire to lose oneself for hours in mindless entertainment, to dull the senses with alcohol or drugs. It is the wish that the painful feelings would just go away. In its most extreme and tragic form, it is the desire for life itself to end. It is the cry of a self that, having failed in its quest to become something, now craves to become nothing. It is the ultimate expression of the belief that our being is the source of our pain. This burning thirst, tanha, is the initial movement, the reaching out And when our hand finds something, the next stage begins, upadana, which means clinging or grasping. If tanha is the thirst, upadana is the refusal to put the glass down once we have had a drink, clutching it in the desperate fear that we will never drink again. It is this act of clinging, of making a tight fist around our experiences, that truly locks us into the cycle of suffering. We cling to our ideas, our possessions, our relationships, and most of all, we cling to the idea of ourselves. We cling to the story of me as a good person, a competent professional, a loving partner. When reality inevitably challenges this story, when we act unkindly, when we make a mistake at work, when we feel jealousy clash between the reality of the moment and the story we are clinging to, creates immense pain. We also cling desperately to external validation. We outsource our sense of worth, placing it in the precarious hands of others. A word of praise makes us feel solid and valuable. A criticism shatters us. The number of likes on a post, the tone of a boss's email, the approval in a partner's eyes, these become the barometers of our inner weather. Our peace of mind becomes a commodity, traded on the fickle stock market of public opinion. We become performers, constantly adjusting our masks, terrified of the moment when the audience might stop applauding. There is a simple and powerful parable that illustrates this self-imprisonment. In some parts of Asia, a traditional trap is set for monkeys. A coconut is hollowed out, and a hole is drilled in it, just large enough for a monkey to slide its open hand through. Inside the coconut, some delicious rice or a sweet nut is placed as bait. The trap is then chained to a tree. Sooner or later, a monkey comes along, smells the treat, and slips its hand inside the coconut. It grasps the rice, making a fist, and then it tries to pull its hand out, but it cannot. The fist, now clutching the prize, is too large to pass back through the hole. The monkey is trapped. It pulls and shrieks, growing more and more frantic, but it is held fast. All that it needs to do to be free is to open its hand, to let go of the rice. But its craving, its clinging, is so strong that this simple act of letting go becomes impossible. The monkey is not being held by the coconut or the chain. It is being held by its own clenched fist. We are this monkey. The world offers us countless forms of rice praise, pleasure, security, identity. We reach out and grasp them, making a fist, and then we wonder why we feel trapped, why we are not free. We blame the trap. We blame the world. We blame our circumstances. But the source of our bondage is our own clinging. Freedom is just one open palm away. It is vital to understand that this teaching is not a rejection of all desire. The spiritual path is not one of lifeless apathy. The ancient texts make a distinction between tanha, the feverish thirst of the ego, and chanda, which is a wholesome desire, a sincere intention, the desire to walk, to eat, to learn, to create beauty, to help another being. These are forms of chanda. They are natural, healthy impulses. A mother's desire to care for her child is chanda. An artist's desire to create a masterpiece is chanda. The difference lies in the energy behind it. Chanda is rooted in inspiration and love. Tanha is rooted in a sense of lack and fear. A wholesome desire wishes well for oneself and others, while craving seeks only to fill the ego's emptiness. We have now looked at the cause of our dis-ease. It is this internal process of thirsting and clinging, of reaching for things and then making a tight fist around them, hoping they will make us feel safe and whole. But we are trying to grasp at smoke. We are trying to build a fortress on shifting sands. For what is the true nature of the things we cling to? What is the nature of our thoughts, our feelings, our bodies, and the world itself? The answer to this question is the key that can unlock our clenched fist, and it leads us to the next profound truth, the universal law of impermanence. We have seen the inner mechanism of our own suffering, the thirsty craving, tanha, and the tight-fisted clinging, upadana. We reach for things in the world, believing they will make us happy and secure, and then we grasp them tightly, terrified of them changing or disappearing. We try to build a permanent home for our ego on what we believe to be solid ground. But now, we must look honestly at the nature of this ground. We must examine the very fabric of reality itself. And when we do, we discover the third of life's great, universal characteristics, a truth so profound it has the power to loosen our grip and set us free. This is the truth of impermanence, or anicca. Anicca is the universal law of change. It simply states that everything that comes into being is subject to decay and dissolution. Nothing is static, nothing is permanent. Everything is in a state of constant, dynamic flow. This is not a dark philosophy or a depressing opinion. It is a simple, observable fact. Look at the vast cosmos. Stars are born in fiery nebulae. They shine for billions of years, and then they collapse and die, seeding the universe with the elements for new life. Mountains are thrust upwards by the slow violence of tectonics, and they are worn down, grain by grain, by wind and rain. The seasons turn in their endless, graceful cycle. Everything you can see, from the greatest galaxy to the smallest stone, is part of this cosmic dance of arising and passing away. Now, bring this cosmic truth into your own intimate experience. Consider the body you inhabit. Is it the same body you had as a child? Is it even the same body you had 7 years ago? Science tells us that nearly every cell has been replaced. Your body is not a static object. It is a river of processes, a continuous flow of nourishment taken in and energy expended. It is a verb, not a noun. And what of your mind? Think of a thought you had just a moment ago. Where is it now? It appeared, lingered for a second, and vanished, replaced by a new thought. Your mind is a sky, and thoughts are clouds, constantly forming, drifting, and dissolving. And your emotions, joy, sadness, anger, peace, they visit you like guests. They arise in response to conditions. They stay for a while, and then they depart. Nothing within your experience is solid, fixed, or permanent. To resist this flow is like trying to hold back the tide with your bare hands. It is a struggle that guarantees exhaustion and defeat. Herein lies a truth of incredible healing power, especially for the persistent pain of inadequacy. When that familiar feeling arises, that heavy cloak of "I am not good enough," we tend to treat it as a permanent truth about ourselves. We believe it is a core feature of our identity, a stain that can never be washed away. We give it a name, a history, and we build a solid story around it. But the law of anicca invites us to see it differently. This feeling, like any other feeling, is impermanent. It is a temporary weather pattern in the vast sky of your awareness. It arose because certain conditions were present, perhaps a critical comment, a comparison on social media, or a tired mind. But just as it arose, it will also pass away if you allow it to. The only thing that gives it the illusion of permanence is our clinging to it. We hold on to it. We feed it with more stories. We replay the memories that trigger it. We essentially invite the storm cloud to park itself over our heads. But what if we could just observe it without grasping? What if we could greet it with the understanding, "Ah, this is the feeling of inadequacy. It is here now. It is unpleasant. It is also anicca. It will pass." This simple recognition is a revolutionary act. It tells us that our pain is not a life sentence. It is not who we are. It is just the weather of this moment. This truth does not just free us from our pain. It imbues our lives with a profound and poignant beauty. It is the very impermanence of things that makes them so precious. We stand in awe of the cherry blossoms, their delicate pink petals blanketing the trees, precisely because we know they will be gone in a week, scattered by the wind. Their fleeting nature is the source of their heartbreaking beauty. The sound of a child's laughter is so precious because we know it will change. The child will grow, and this exact moment of innocent joy will never come again. It is anicca that urges us to be fully present, to truly listen, to truly see, to truly love. If our loved ones were to live forever, if every day were exactly the same, life would lose its urgency, its texture, its sacredness. It would become a stagnant pond. Impermanence is the current that keeps the river of life fresh, moving, and alive. It is an invitation from the universe to wake up and participate fully in the miracle of the present moment, because this moment is all there is, and it is already passing. There is a simple Zen story that captures this beautifully. A master and his student were walking on a beach. The master bent down and, with his finger, drew a perfect, beautiful circle in the wet sand. "This is life," he said. He and his student admired the elegant form, the clear boundary between inside and outside. Then, just as a small wave was receding, the master reached down and with a single, gentle swipe of his hand, erased the circle completely, leaving only a smooth, wet patch of sand. "This," he said, looking at his student with a kind smile, "is also life. Life is not just the creation of the form, the circle, the ego. It is also its dissolution. It is the drawing and the erasing, the coming together and the falling apart. To accept one without the other is to live in a state of constant war with reality. To embrace the whole cycle is to find peace. We can learn to embrace this cycle through practice, by training our minds to see anicca in every moment. The most fundamental tool is your own breath. Each breath is a perfect teaching in impermanence. The inhalation arises, the lungs fill this as birth, coming into being. There is a brief pause, and then the exhalation begins. The air is released. The body lets go. This is death, dissolution. With every single breath you take, you are participating in this fundamental rhythm of the universe. By simply paying attention to the full cycle of your breath, you are meditating on anicca. You can also observe it in the sensations of your body. An itch appears on your arm. Observe it. Feel its intensity, its location. Do not scratch it. Just watch. You will notice that it changes, pulses, and eventually fades away on its own. It is not solid. It is a fleeting process. You can do the same with your emotions. When a wave of sadness or joy washes over you, instead of being swept away by it, try to observe it with curiosity. Where do you feel it in your body? Does it have a color, a texture? Watch how it changes in intensity, how it eventually subsides and is replaced by something else. This practice is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It is about becoming wise. It is about learning not to build a permanent home on a temporary wave. And so, we arrive at a profound vantage point. We see that we live in a universe of constant, unending flow. The stars, the mountains, our bodies, our mind soul, are part of this impermanent river. We have seen that our suffering comes from trying to stand still in this river, from clinging to people, things, and ideas as if they were solid and eternal. This realization, as liberating as it is, naturally pushes us toward one final, earth-shattering question. If everything we experience is in flux, if all the contents of our awareness are impermanent, what about the container? What about the I who is witnessing all of this? Is there a solid, permanent, unchanging self at the core of our being, the silent observer watching the river flow by? If the body is not permanent, the thoughts are not permanent, and the feelings are not permanent, then who exactly are we? This question dismantles the last possible hiding place for our fear and our insecurity, and it leads us directly into the heart of one of the deepest and most liberating teachings of all, the truth of anatta, of no self. We have walked the path of understanding to a remarkable precipice. We have seen that our inner world is governed by a restless ego, that the nature of life contains an unavoidable friction called dukkha, that the cause of this friction is our own thirst and clinging, and that everything we cling to is, by its very nature, impermanent. The ground beneath our feet is a flowing river, not solid rock. This leads us to the most radical and liberating question of all. Amidst this universal, ceaseless flow, who is the one doing the experiencing? We have looked at the contents of our experience and found them all to be in flux. But what of the container? What of that core sense of I that we feel is watching it all? The silent, unchanging witness behind our eyes. This is the ego's final sanctuary, its last claim to permanence. And it is here that the Buddha's teaching becomes most profound, offering a key that unlocks the deepest chamber of our self-made prison. This key is the wisdom of anatta, or no self. Now, let us be very clear. The teaching of no self does not mean that you do not exist. It does not mean that you are an illusion, or that nothing matters. When you are pricked by a thorn, the pain is real. When you feel joy, the joy is real. Anatta is not a doctrine of annihilation. It is a doctrine of relationship. It means there is no separate, independent, permanent, self-existing, apart from the flow of life. It is the ultimate antidote to the illusion of separation that causes us so much pain. To understand this, we must do what a scientist does. We must put this so-called self under a microscope and investigate it with gentle, unwavering honesty. The Buddha provided a method for this investigation, a way of deconstructing our experience into its fundamental components. These are known as the 5 aggregates, or the 5 heaps, that we mistake for a solid self. The first aggregate is form. This is your physical body, your skin, your bones, your organs, your breath. Is this body your true self? Look at it closely. It was born, it grew, it is aging, and one day it will die. It gets sick, it gets tired. It is entirely dependent on external conditions like food, water, and air. It is constantly changing, a river of cellular processes. Since it is impermanent and dependent, it cannot be a permanent, independent self. It is something you have, not something you are. So, we look deeper. The second aggregate is feeling. This refers to the raw sensations that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. They are categorized into 3 types: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. A cool breeze on a hot day is pleasant. The sting of an unkind word is unpleasant. The feeling of your clothes against your skin might be neutral. Are you your feelings? This is clearly not the case. Feelings are like bubbles on the surface of water. They arise, shimmer for a moment, and pop. They are entirely dependent on contact with an external object. They are fleeting visitors, not the master of the house. So, the self cannot be found here. The third aggregate is perception. This is the faculty of the mind that recognizes and labels. It sees a collection of colors and shapes and says, tree. It hears a sound and identifies it as birdsong. It feels a sensation and calls it sadness. It is the process of making sense of the raw data provided by our feelings. Are you your perceptions? Again, no. Your ability to perceive tree is dependent on there being a tree, on your eyes functioning, and on your past experience of what a tree is. Perceptions are conditioned and constantly changing. The self is not to be found here either. The fourth aggregate is mental formations. This is a vast and crucial category. It includes all of our thoughts, our ideas, our opinions, our beliefs, our biases, our habits, our moods, and our volitions, the urge to act. This is where the ego loves to hide. We think, I am my thoughts. I am my intelligence. I am my anxiety. I am my political beliefs. But look closely. Are you really your thoughts? A thought arises, unbidden, and then it vanishes. Another follows. Are you the angry thought, the compassionate thought, the foolish thought? They are all just momentary mental events, like flickers on a screen. They are impermanent, conditioned, and often contradictory. To claim any one of them as your true permanent self is to build your house on a passing cloud. Finally, we come to the fifth aggregate, consciousness. This can be the trickiest. We might think, okay, if I'm not my body or my mind, then I must be the awareness itself, the pure consciousness that knows all of these things. But the Buddha's analysis is more subtle. He explained that consciousness is not a single, monolithic entity. It is also conditioned and dependent. There is I consciousness, which arises when the I meets a form. There is ear consciousness, which arises when the ear meets a sound. There is mind consciousness, which arises when the mind meets a thought. There is no independent consciousness that exists on its own. It is always consciousness of something. Like a light, it cannot illuminate itself. It only exists in the act of illuminating an object. It too is part of the flickering, interdependent flow. After this exhaustive search, we are left with a startling conclusion. We have taken apart the entire machine that we call me, and we have not found a single, permanent, independent driver in the driver's seat. This very investigation is famously illustrated in a dialogue between a Buddhist sage named Nagasena and the Greek king Melinda. The king, a sharp intellectual, arrived to meet the sage and asked his name. Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was just a designation, a name for a collection of parts, and that no permanent individual Nagasena could be found. The king was amused and challenged him. If there is no Nagasena, then who is it that wears these robes and eats this food? You speak a falsehood. He then gestured to the king's own magnificent chariot. Nagasena calmly asked, Your Majesty, how did you arrive here today? On foot or in a chariot? In a chariot, the king replied proudly. Excellent, said Nagasena. Then please, explain to me what a chariot is. Is the pole the chariot? No, venerable sir, said the king. Are the wheels the chariot? Number, is the axle, the chariot, the frame, the reins? To each question, the king had to answer no. Then, Nagasena concluded, Are all of these parts together the chariot? No, sir. Then, is there something else, separate from all these parts, which is the chariot? No, venerable sir. Nagasena then declared, Your Majesty, I have asked you at length, and I cannot discover what this chariot is. Chariot is just a sound, a name. a designation we use when all the parts are assembled and working together. In the highest, ultimate sense, there is no chariot. The king was stunned into silence, realizing the profound truth. Just so, Nagasena explained. Nagasena is just a convenient name we give to the temporary assembly of the 5 aggregates. You are not a static statue. You are a flowing river. You are a dynamic process. The insight of anatta is not that you are nothing, but that you are everything in process. And in this, there is unimaginable freedom. If there is no fixed, solid self to defend, then who is it that gets insulted by a harsh word? If there is no permanent self to promote, what is the purpose of empty pride? If there is no essential, flawed self to be ashamed of, why must we carry the weight of past mistakes as if they were a permanent brand on our soul? The realization of anatta is like putting down a tremendously heavy burden that you have been carrying for so long. You forgot you were even holding it. It is the end of the ego's lifelong, exhausting project. But a question may scream out in protest. If I have no self, does that mean I am worthless? If I am not a unique, special individual, do I not matter? This is the ego's last, fearful cry. But the wisdom of anatta does not destroy value. It relocates it. In fact, the belief in a separate self was the very source of our feeling of worthlessness, because it created an isolated, fragile entity that was constantly in need of external proof of its value. The truth is far more beautiful. If you are not a separate, isolated noun, but a flowing, interconnected verb, then your value is not something you must build or find for yourself. Your value is inherent in your participation in the whole. And this points us toward the next, and most heart-opening, truth on our journey. If we are not separate, then what are we? If the self is empty of a separate identity, what is it full of? The answer lies in a single beautiful word that contains the universe into being. We have arrived at the very heart of our journey. We have stood at the edge of the abyss, looking into the nature of the self, and found it to be empty of any solid, separate, unchanging core. We have dismantled the machine piece by piece, the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the thoughts, the consciousness, and found no permanent ghost in the machine, no lonely king on the throne. This discovery, this truth of no self, or anatta, can feel like a great void, a frightening emptiness. The ego recoils from it, for it is the one thing it cannot survive. But the wisdom of the Buddha does not leave us in a void. It invites us to look again, to look more deeply into the nature of this emptiness. And when we do, we find that it is not an emptiness of non-existence. It is an emptiness of separation. And this emptiness is the most fertile ground imaginable. It is not a lack. It is a space of infinite potential, a space that allows for everything to be. To be empty of a separate self is to be full of the entire universe. This is the gateway to the most healing, most connective, and most beautiful truth of all, the truth of interbeing. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, who gave us this beautiful word, would often teach this profound concept using the simplest of objects, a single sheet of paper. Let us perform this meditation together, right now. Imagine you are holding a clean, white sheet of paper in your hands. Feel its smoothness, its coolness. Look at its whiteness. Now, let us ask the question, what is this sheet of paper? The answer, it is paper, is a beginning, but it is a shallow one. Let us look more deeply. As you look at the paper, can you see the cloud? Be very still and look. Without a cloud floating in the sky, there can be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. So the cloud is essential for the paper to exist. The cloud is not outside of the paper. The cloud is in the paper. If you were to send the cloud back to the sky, the sheet of paper could not be here. Its very existence depends on the cloud. Now, look again. Can you see the sunshine? Without the light and warmth of the sun, the tree cannot perform photosynthesis. It cannot grow tall and strong. So the sun is also in the sheet of paper. The sunshine that left the sun millions of miles away and millions of minutes ago is right here, in your hand, contained within the fibers of the paper. And what of the logger, the person who went into the forest and cut the tree down? Can you see the logger in the paper? Look deeply. You can see their strong arms, their sweat, their focused mind. You can see their daily bread, the wheat that was grown in a field, which also needed the sun and the rain. You can see the logger's parents, who gave them life. All of these things are present in this single sheet of paper. And what about the person who drove the truck, the people who worked in the paper mill, the person who sold you the paper? They are all here, too. Their lives, their actions, their breath are all inextricably linked to the existence of this simple object. The paper is full of what we call non-paper elements. If you were to remove any one of these things, if you take the sun out of the paper, or the rain, or the logger, or the wheat for his bread, the sheet of paper would dissolve. It would cease to exist. So the truth is that this paper is empty of only one thing, a separate, independent self. It is empty of being just paper. It is entirely full of everything else. It is full of the cosmos. To be is to interbe. The paper and the cloud inter-are. The paper and the sun inter-are. The paper and the logger inter-are. This is the profound reality of interbeing. It is not a philosophy. It is not a belief. It is the very nature of reality, visible in every single thing, if we only take the time to look deeply. Now, let us gently put the sheet of paper aside and turn this same deep looking upon ourselves. Let us investigate our own being with the same meditative lens. Consider the food you ate for your last meal. Perhaps it was a piece of bread. Look deeply into that bread. You can see the grain of wheat growing in a field. You can see the sunshine, the rain, and the earth that nourished it. You can see the farmer who planted and harvested it, the baker who kneaded the dough, the person who transported it to the store. All of these people and all of these cosmic elements are inside that piece of bread. And now, that bread is inside of you. It is becoming your blood, your cells, your energy. Therefore, the sun, the cloud, the earth, the farmer, the baker, they are all inside you right now. You are not separate from them. You inter-are with them. Your body is a living museum of the cosmos. Look at your own hands. In the shape of your fingers, the lines on your palm, can you see the hands of your mother? Can you see the hands of your father? Can you see their DNA? The sacred genetic code that they passed on to you, which they, in turn, received from their parents. All of your ancestors, stretching back in an unbroken chain through thousands, even millions of years, are present in you. Their struggles, their joys, their resilience, their very essence is alive in your body right now. You are not a solitary being, a historical anomaly. You are the crest of a great wave of humanity, a wave that has been traveling across the ocean of time. You are their continuation. They inter-are with you. Consider the simple act of breathing, an act you perform more than 20,000 times a day without thought. You breathe in the air. This atmosphere, is a gift from countless generations of plant life. You breathe in the oxygen that a tree in a nearby park or a forest thousands of miles away has just released. Then you breathe out carbon dioxide which that same tree will take in as nourishment. You and the trees are engaged in an endless, intimate, and life-giving conversation. Your lungs and the green forests of the world are part of a single, planetary, respiratory system. To see yourself as separate from the trees is an illusion. You are breathing each other into existence in every moment. And what of your mind? The very language you are using to think these thoughts, the words you use to frame your world, did you invent them? Number, they are an inheritance, a gift from your culture, your society, your ancestors. Every idea you hold, every piece of knowledge you cherish, came to you through a teacher, a book, a conversation, a friend, the wisdom of Plato, the poetry of Rumi, the scientific discoveries of Einstein, the simple advice of a grandparental. Of these things are present in the architecture of your mind. Your consciousness is a vast web of interconnected influences. When we see this truth, when we truly allow it to sink into our being, the painful illusion of loneliness begins to dissolve. Loneliness is a disease of mistaken identity. It is the suffering that arises from the fierce belief that we are a separate, isolated self, cut off from the world. But how can you possibly be alone? Look around you. The chair you are sitting on holds you, a gift of the tree and the craftsperson. The roof over your head protects you, a gift of the miners, the builders, the architects. The light you see by is a gift of the sun and countless engineers and thinkers who harness the power of electricity. The entire universe has conspired in this very moment to bring you into being and to sustain you. You are not a solitary island. You are a crossroads through which the entire universe flows. You are not a drop in the ocean of life. You are the entire ocean expressing itself as a temporary, beautiful drop. And this brings us back, finally, to that wound, that question that started our entire journey. The question of self-worth. Where does my value come from? We have looked for it inside the box of the separate self and found that box to be empty. And now we know why. We were looking in the wrong place. Your value is not a personal possession. It is not something you earn through achievement or accumulate through being perfect. Your worth is not located in your separate self, because your separate self is an illusion. Your true worth is a reflection of the worth of the entire cosmos, which is manifesting through you. The universe has been engaged in a 13.8 billion year process of becoming. From the Big Bang to the formation of galaxies, from the birth of stars to the creation of heavy elements in their fiery hearts, from the formation of our sun and this planet to the first spark of life in the ancient ocean-severing single event, has been a necessary condition for your presence here today. The resilience of life that survived countless cataclysms, the beauty of a spiral nebula, the strength of an ancient mountain, of this is your inheritance. It is in you. You are a child of the cosmos, a legitimate and precious manifestation of this grand, unfolding process. To say I am worthless is a profound act of cognitive dissonance. It is to look at the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, and the entire lineage of life and declare that it is all without value. It is a logical impossibility. Your worth is not based on your performance. It does not increase when you succeed and decrease when you fail. It is not dependent on the opinions of others. Your worth is inherent, unshakable, and absolute, because you are an expression of the whole. You are the universe, looking out through a unique pair of eyes. You are life itself, experiencing the joy of a warm breeze, the sorrow of a loss, the peace of a quiet moment. There is no need to prove yourself. There is no need to build a bigger, better ego. Your only task is to realize what you already are. You are a miracle of connection. This deep understanding of interbeing is the ultimate ground of peace. It is the solid rock upon which we can build a new kind of self-esteem, one that is not based on comparison or achievement, but on connection and belonging. The emptiness of anatta has revealed itself to be the fullness of interbeing. Being empty of a separate self has allowed us to see that we are full of our parents, our ancestors, the sun, the sky, and all of life. This intellectual understanding can be a powerful balm for the soul. It can reframe our entire experience. But to truly live this reality, to feel it in our bones, and not just think it in our minds, requires more than just listening. It requires a new way of seeing. We need a practical tool that allows us to see the cloud in the paper in our daily lives, to see the farmer in our bread, to see the cosmos in ourselves. We need to cultivate the energy of being truly present. And that energy, that powerful tool of deep seeing, is called mindfulness. We have journeyed to the heart of a profound realization, the truth of interbeing. We have seen, with our mind's eye, that we are not separate, isolated islands, but vast and intricate networks of connection, interwoven with the entire cosmos. To know this intellectually is to hold a map that shows the way to a hidden treasure. But holding the map is not the same as experiencing the treasure. The intellect can point the way, but it cannot take the journey for us. To move from knowing the truth to living the truth, we need a practical, tangible tool. We need a way to cultivate the art of deep seeing in every moment of our lives. This tool, this energy, this art is mindfulness. The ancient Pali word for mindfulness is sati, and it carries the meaning of remembering to be present. It is the energy of being awake and aware of what is happening, both inside of us and around us, in this very moment. It is not a mystical state reserved for monks on mountaintops. It is a fundamental human capacity, a seed that exists within all of us, waiting to be cultivated. However, before we learn to cultivate it, we must be clear about what it is not. There is a common misconception that mindfulness is the practice of stopping our thoughts, of forcing the mind into a state of blank tranquility. This idea has caused countless people to become frustrated and give up, believing they are bad at meditation because their mind is always so busy. The truth is, the mind's nature is to think, just as the heart's nature is to beat. Mindfulness is not a battle against thought. It is a radical shift in our relationship to thought. Imagine you are sitting at the bottom of a clear blue sky. Thoughts are like clouds drifting by. Some are white and fluffy. Some are dark and stormy. Before practicing mindfulness, we are often lost in the clouds. We believe we are the storm cloud of anger, or we desperately chase after the fluffy cloud of a pleasant memory. Mindfulness is the practice of remembering that you are the sky, not the clouds. You are the vast, open, and accepting awareness in which all thoughts and feelings can arise and pass away without disturbing your fundamental peace. Mindfulness, therefore, is not about stopping the clouds. It is about resting in the sky, like nature of your own mind, allowing the weather to pass without resistance. So how do we begin to cultivate this energy? We begin with the most simple, reliable, and ever-present reality in our lives, our own breath. The breath is the ultimate anchor for the present moment. Your breath is not happening in the past. It is not happening in the future. It is happening right now. To bring your attention to your breath is to bring your mind home to your body, home to the here and now. The practice can be this simple. Find a comfortable position and gently close your eyes. You do not need to change your breath in any way. Simply observe it as it is. Feel the sensation of the air entering your nostrils, cool and fresh. Feel the gentle rise of your abdomen on the in-breath and the gentle fall on the out-breath. Just this. Inevitably, your mind will wander. This is not a failure. It is simply what minds do. It will drift into planning the future, replaying the past, worrying, or fantasizing. When you notice that your mind has wandered, and that moment of noticing is a moment of mindfulness, you simply acknowledge where it has gone without any judgment or self-criticism. And then, very gently, like leading a lost puppy by the hand, you guide your attention back to the anchor of the breath, back to the sensation of rising and falling. This process of wandering, noticing, and gently returning over and over and over again is the practice. It is the bicep curl for your attention muscle. Each time you return to the breath, you are strengthening your capacity to be present. While this formal practice of sitting with the breath is a powerful foundation, the true aim of mindfulness is to bring this quality of awareness into every moment of our lives. It is to transform mundane activities into profound meditations. You can practice while drinking a cup of tea. Instead of being lost in thought, you can be fully present with the experience. Feel the warmth of the cup in your hands. See the steam rising. Smell the aroma. Take a sip and truly taste it. In that moment, you are fully alive. You are not just consuming a beverage. You are experiencing the gift of life. And with the insight of Interbeing, you can see the tea leaves, the rain, the sun, and the people who harvested it, all present in your cup. You can practice mindful walking. Feel the solid earth beneath your feet, the contact of your heel, your sole, your toes. Walk not with the goal of getting somewhere else, but for the pure joy of walking. Each step can be a confirmation of your presence, a moment of peace. You can practice mindful eating, mindful showering, mindful driving. The opportunities are endless. The invitation is to dissolve the boundary between meditation time and the rest of my life. There is a beloved Zen story that perfectly captures this integration. A young, eager student approaches a Zen master and asks, "Master, what did you do before you became enlightened?" The master replies, "I chopped wood and I carried water." The student, expecting a more dramatic answer, then asks, "And what do you do now, after you have attained enlightenment?" The master smiles and replies, "I chop wood and I carry water." The student is confused. What then is the difference? The master explains, "Before I was enlightened, when I was chopping wood, I was thinking about carrying water. And when I was carrying water, I was thinking about the tea I would make. Now, when I am chopping wood, I am only chopping wood. When I am carrying water, I am only carrying water." The difference is not in the external action, but in the internal quality of presence. Enlightenment is not an escape from the ordinary tasks of life. It is the ability to be fully present and awake within them. It is to find the sacred in the simple act of chopping wood. As we cultivate this energy of mindfulness, we begin to experience its profound fruits. Firstly, we heal the deep split between our mind and our body. We have become a culture of talking heads, living almost entirely in the world of thought, treating our bodies as mere vehicles to carry our brains from one meeting to another. Mindfulness brings us home to our bodies, allowing us to feel our feet on the ground, to inhabit our skin, to feel grounded and centered. This reduces the power of the anxious, spinning mind, rooting us in the felt reality of the present. Secondly, and most importantly for our journey, mindfulness is the very instrument that allows us to perceive into being directly. It is the microscope that reveals the hidden connections. With a mindful, present attention, you do not just know that the sun is in your food, you can almost taste its warmth. With a mindful, present attention, you do not just think you are connected to the earth, you can feel that connection with every step. Mindfulness transforms the philosophical concept of interbeing into a lived, felt, and undeniable reality. It is the bridge from a beautiful idea to your actual experience. We have now established our foundation. We have our anchor in the breath and the body. We have our practice of bringing awareness to our daily activities. We have built up our capacity for stable, non-judgmental attention. With this foundation firmly in place, we are now prepared to turn the gentle, illuminating light of mindfulness toward one of the most challenging, powerful, and often overwhelming territories of our inner world, the turbulent, colorful, and ever-changing landscape of our feelings. We have learned to anchor ourselves in the calm harbor of the breath and the body, cultivating the steady energy of mindfulness. We have built a safe and stable place from which to observe the world. Now, with this foundation beneath us, we are ready to undertake one of the most courageous and healing acts of the inner life, to turn this gentle, non-judgmental awareness toward the rich, turbulent, and often intimidating landscape of our own feelings. In the Buddhist tradition, feelings, or Vedana, are not seen as enemies to be conquered. They are seen as messengers, carrying vital information about our relationship with the world. The practice is not to shoot the messenger, but to learn how to listen to its message with wisdom and with grace. First, we must look honestly at our habitual relationship with our feelings. For most of us, it is a relationship built on resistance and control. When pleasant feelings arise, joy, excitement, pride, love, immediate instinct is to cling to them. We grasp them with a tight fist, saying, "This is wonderful. I hope this never ends." But this very act of clinging introduces a subtle anxiety, the fear of loss, which pollutes the very joy we are trying to preserve. We cannot simply enjoy the sunshine. We are already worrying about the coming clouds. Then there are the unpleasant feelings: sadness, anger, fear, jealousy, shame, and that pervasive feeling of inadequacy. What is our strategy here? It is one of aversion. We push them away. We suppress them, telling ourselves, "I shouldn't feel this way." We distract ourselves with work, with food, with entertainment, with anything to avoid the discomfort of the raw feeling. We numb ourselves, hoping that if we ignore the messenger, it will simply go away. But suppressed energy does not vanish. It is simply pushed down into the basement of our consciousness, where it festers and gathers strength. It can manifest as a chronic, low-grade anxiety, a sudden, inexplicable depression, or an explosive outburst of anger that seems disproportionate to the situation. By refusing to feel our feelings, we become ruled by them. Mindfulness offers a third way, a path that is neither clinging nor aversion. It is the path of gentle acceptance. It begins with the fundamental recognition that you are not your feelings. Just as you are the sky, not the clouds, you are the vast open space of awareness in which feelings arise and pass away. A feeling of sadness may visit you, but it is not the totality of who you are. It is a temporary weather event. You are the space that can hold the sadness, that can hold the joy, that can hold the boredom. When you know this, you no longer have to be afraid of your own inner weather. The practice is simple, yet profound. It is the practice of turning toward our feelings with curiosity and care, instead of turning away in fear. The Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, taught a beautiful method for this. The first step is to simply recognize the feeling as it arises. You say to yourself, A feeling of anger has just manifested in me. The second step is to acknowledge and embrace it. You are not endorsing the anger or planning to act on it. You are simply acknowledging its presence, making peace with the fact that it is here. The third step is perhaps the most transformative. It is to greet the feeling as if it were a small child. You say, internally, "Hello, my anger. I see that you are there. I will take good care of you." This simple act changes everything. It transforms the inner landscape from a battlefield, where you are at war with yourself, into a nursery, where you are the compassionate caregiver for your own inner children. Anger, sadness, fear, these are all parts of us that are suffering. They are crying out for our attention, for our care. When a baby cries, we do not yell at it to be quiet. We do not lock it in the basement. We pick it up. We hold it. We try to understand what it needs. We must learn to do the same for our own emotions. A powerful way to do this is to explore where the emotion lives in your body. Feelings are not just abstract concepts. They are physical energies. When you feel anger, where is it? Perhaps you feel a tightness in your jaw, a clenching in your fists, a burning heat in your chest or stomach. Instead of getting lost in the story that is fueling the anger, "He disrespected me. That was unfair." You can bring your mindful attention directly to these raw physical sensations. Just observe the heat, the tightness. Breathe into it. Don't judge it or try to make it go away. Just be with it. You will discover something remarkable. The physical sensations are not static. They pulse, they change, they intensify, and then they soften. By staying with the raw energy of the feeling, without feeding it with the story, you allow it to run its natural course. You learn that it is just energy, and you are the space in which this energy can move. And, eventually, release. There is a timeless Buddhist parable that perfectly illustrates the wisdom of this practice. It is called the story of the two arrows. The Buddha said that in life, we are all subject to being struck by an arrow. This is the first arrow. It is the unavoidable pain of human existence, sickness, loss, disappointment, the unkind words of another. This first arrow hurts. It is dukkha. But then, most of us, immediately after being struck by the first arrow, proceed to shoot a second arrow into ourselves, in the very same spot. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It is the voice of judgment, blame, and self-pity. We say, "Why did this happen to me? I can't believe they said that. This is terrible. I can't stand this feeling. I am a failure." It is this second arrow, the arrow of our own mental resistance and proliferation, that causes the true suffering. The pain of the first arrow is unavoidable. The suffering of the second arrow is entirely optional. Mindfulness of feelings is the practice of learning not to shoot the second arrow. It is the courage to be present with the clean, simple pain of the first arrow, without adding a layer of mental suffering on top of it. It is to feel the sting of criticism and just allow it to be there as a painful sensation, without adding the second arrow of "I am worthless." It is to feel the grief of loss without adding the second arrow of "I will never be happy again." We learn to care for the initial wound so that we do not infect it with our own resistance. This practice of embracing our feelings does not mean we become passive or that we let emotions control our actions. On the contrary, it is the foundation for wise action. When we are no longer afraid of the energy of our emotions, we can begin to learn from them. The energy of anger, when it is not blindly acted upon, contains a powerful fuel for change. It can show us where an injustice has occurred. Met with mindfulness, the fire of anger can be transformed from a destructive wildfire into the focused flame of compassionate action. The energy of sadness, when we allow ourselves to truly feel it, can break our hearts open, dissolving our sense of separation and connecting us to all beings who suffer. It can become the source of profound empathy. Even the energy of self-doubt, when met with a caring attention, can be transformed. Instead of paralyzing us, it can become the energy of humility, the sincere desire to learn, to grow, and to ask for help. By learning to be a friend to our own hearts, by welcoming every guest, both pleasant and unpleasant, we put an end to the inner war. We cultivate a sense of wholeness and integrity. We are no longer fragmented, with parts of ourselves exiled to the shadows. This act of offering radical acceptance and care to all of our feelings, even the most difficult ones, is one of the highest forms of self-love. And when we have learned how to offer this unconditional kindness to the inner world of our feelings, we are ready to take the next natural step, to expand that same quality of gentle, caring friendship to our entire being. We are ready to learn the art of metta, of true and unconditional loving kindness for ourselves. Having learned to sit with the flow of our feelings, to greet our inner storms with the calm presence of the sky, we have cultivated a space of mindful acceptance within us. We have stopped the inner war. Now, into that space of peace, we are invited to actively plant a seed. It is the seed of friendship, of warmth, of unconditional kindness. This is the practice of metta, a Pali word often translated as loving kindness, but which more accurately means a boundless, universal friendliness. And this practice begins in the one place we have been taught to neglect, the one place we are often most harsh, with ourselves. The truth is simple and absolute. You cannot give to another what you do not first possess. You cannot pour from an empty cup. To truly offer compassion to the world, you must first learn to be a friend to yourself. For many of us, this idea of self-compassion can feel uncomfortable, even wrong. We may mistake it for self-pity, for a weak and sentimental wallowing in our own problems. We may confuse it with self-indulgence, a license to do whatever we want without discipline. Or we may fear it is a form of narcissism, an arrogant self-obsession. Metta is none of these things. It is not telling yourself you are perfect or better than others. It is not giving yourself a pass for harmful behavior. It is a courageous and wholesome wish for your own true well-being. It is the simple, powerful intention to be free from suffering. It is the same fundamental kindness you would effortlessly offer to a dear friend who was hurting, or to a small child who had fallen and scraped their knee. It is the recognition of our shared, basic humanity. We are all beings who wish to be happy and to avoid pain. Self-compassion is simply remembering to include ourselves in that circle of care. To cultivate this, we must begin to shift our fundamental perspective on our own flaws and mistakes. Our inner critic, that relentless voice of judgment we mistake for a helpful motivator, thrives on a cold and unforgiving view of our past. It replays our errors, our clumsy words, our failures, and uses them as proof of our inherent worthlessness. It judges the act and condemns the actor. The practice of compassion invites a different kind of inquiry. It invites us to look back on a time we acted unskillfully, a time we caused harm to ourselves or others, not with the harsh glare of condemnation, but with the soft light of understanding. Bring to mind such a moment. Gently, instead of focusing on the shame or regret, ask with genuine curiosity, what was happening in me at that moment? What fear was I acting from? What pain was I trying to avoid? What confusion or ignorance was clouding my mind? When we look deeply, we see that our unskillful actions are almost never born from a place of malice. They are born from suffering. They are clumsy, misguided attempts to find happiness or to protect ourselves from pain. The person who spoke those angry words was likely feeling threatened or afraid. The person who acted out of jealousy was feeling the deep pain of inadequacy. The person who was lazy or distracted was perhaps overwhelmed or lost. When we see the suffering behind the action, our heart can soften. The harsh judge is replaced by a wise and understanding friend, one who can say, "Ah, you were in so much pain then. You were doing the best you could with the limited understanding you had at that moment." This is not an excuse for harmful behavior, but it is the foundation for genuine healing and learning. It allows us to learn from our past without being imprisoned by it. From this ground of understanding, we can begin the formal practice of cultivating metta for ourselves. This is not a mental argument or an affirmation. It is an act of the heart. Find a quiet and comfortable position. Allow your body to soften. You might place a hand gently on your heart, feeling the warmth of your own touch. And then, you begin to offer yourself simple, heartfelt wishes. The traditional phrases are a beautiful starting point, but you can adapt them in any way that feels true for you. Repeat them slowly, silently, letting them sink in, not as facts, but as sincere intentions, as blessings you are bestowing upon your own being. You can begin with the phrase, "May I be safe." This is a wish to be safe from outer harm, but more deeply, to be safe from the harm of your own harsh judgment, your own inner critic. It is a wish for a sanctuary of peace within yourself. May I be safe. Then, you can offer the wish, "May I be healthy." This is a wish for the health of your body, for it to be strong and free from illness. It is also a wish for the health of your mind, for it to be free from the fevers of anxiety and the weight of despair. May I be healthy. Next, you can offer the phrase, "May I be happy." This does not refer to the fleeting pleasure of sensory experience. It points to a deeper happiness, the joy and contentment that arise from a heart at peace, a mind that is clear. It is the happiness of being free from the inner war. May I be happy. And finally, you can offer the wish, "May I live with ease." This is a wish for a life free from the constant, grinding friction of dukkha. It is a wish to move through the world with a sense of gentleness, grace, and acceptance, to navigate life's challenges without being overwhelmed by them. May I live with ease. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease. You repeat these phrases over and over as a gentle rhythm, a lullaby for the suffering parts of yourself. Some days, the words may feel hollow, or you may feel you don't deserve them. This is the resistance of old habits. On these days, the practice is even more important. You simply notice the resistance, and you continue to offer the phrases anyway, like planting seeds in soil that is at first hard and dry. With persistent, gentle care, the soil will soften and the seeds will sprout. There is a story of a woman who was a very dedicated gardener. She adored her neighbor's garden, which was full of exotic flowers and beautiful arrangements. Every single day, she would spend hours across the fence, tending to her neighbor's garden. She pulled every weed. She watered every plant. She pruned every rose bush to perfection. Her neighbor's garden became the most beautiful in the entire village, a source of great admiration. But in her devotion to her neighbor's plot, she completely neglected her own. Her own garden became overrun with thorny weeds. The soil grew cracked and barren, and her few flowers withered from thirst. One day, the neighbor came to her and said, "Your kindness has been extraordinary. Please, as a gift, allow me to have one of the beautiful flowers from your own garden." The woman's heart sank, for she had to admit that she had nothing to offer. Her own garden was a wasteland. We are so often this gardener. We are taught to be kind to others, to care for others, to offer our compassion to the world. And these are beautiful, essential qualities. But if we do not tend to our own inner garden, we will eventually have nothing of genuine substance to offer. Our well of kindness will run dry. Self-compassion is not selfish. It is the essential act of tending to your own soil, of watering your own roots, so that you can grow strong and beautiful flowers that you can then genuinely share with the world. This practice of metta is the direct medicine for the deep wound of inadequacy. The voice of the inner critic, that agent of the insecure ego, can only survive in a cold, harsh, judgmental inner climate. When you begin to suffuse your inner world with the warmth of loving kindness, the critic has no place to stand. Its power withers. You are providing for yourself the very thing you have been desperately seeking from the outside world: acceptance, validation, and love. You are coming home to yourself, and when you have truly come home, when your own cup is full of this warmth and unconditional friendship, a beautiful and effortless transformation occurs. The cup begins to overflow. A heart that has learned how to hold its own being with such tenderness cannot help but extend that same tenderness to others. Self-compassion is not a destination, it is the vital first step. It is the doorway through which we walk to discover a boundless compassion for all living things. Having learned to be a friend to ourselves, we are now ready to see that the other is not so other after all. Having learned to tend to our own inner garden, to offer ourselves the life-giving water of loving kindness, we discover a beautiful truth. A heart that has been warmed by self-compassion does not become closed or self-absorbed. Instead, it naturally begins to radiate that warmth outward. The cup of metta, once full, begins to overflow. This is the effortless, organic blossoming of compassion for others. It is not a duty or a chore, but the simple recognition of a profound reality we have already uncovered, the reality of interbeing. If you and I inter, if my happiness is conditioned by your happiness, and my suffering is linked to your suffering, then loving myself and loving you are not two separate activities. They are two sides of the same coin, two wings of the same bird. To wish for my own peace is to simultaneously wish for yours. The journey of extending compassion begins with a shift in perception. It is easy to feel kindness for those we love, a family, our dear friends, our hearts open to them naturally. But what about those we find difficult? What about the person who has criticized us, the colleague who undermines us, the public figure whose actions we despise? Our immediate, conditioned reaction is to close our hearts, to build a wall of judgment, anger, and resentment. We see their actions, and we condemn the actor. But the practice of compassion, informed by the wisdom of interbeing, invites us to look behind the action. It asks us to look for the suffering, just as we learn to look at our own past mistakes with understanding, seeing the fear or ignorance that drove them. We can learn to look at others in the same way. When someone acts with anger, can we see the fear that may be hidden beneath it? When someone is arrogant, can we sense the deep insecurity they might be trying to cover up? When someone is cruel, can we imagine the immense pain they must be carrying in their own hearts? Happy, peaceful, and whole people do not feel the need to cause harm to others. Harmful actions are almost always a cry of pain, a symptom of a deep inner suffering. To see this is not to condone the action. We can still hold people accountable and protect ourselves from harm, but it allows us to separate the person from their unskillful behavior. It allows us to see the suffering human being caught in the grips of their own confusion, just as we ourselves are at times. In that moment of seeing, the hard wall of judgment begins to soften. and a space for compassion can open up. This is where the insight of interbeing becomes our greatest ally. That difficult person is not a solid, independent entity of badness. They too are a flowing river of conditions. They are the product of their parents, their society, their education, their own hidden traumas and joys. They are a manifestation of the universe, just as we are. The very ignorance and craving that causes them to act in harmful ways are the same universal energies that sometimes cause us to act unskillfully. When we see this shared nature, the rigid boundary between me, the good person, and them, the bad person, becomes blurry and transparent. We are all waves in the same ocean of existence, subject to the same currents. With this foundation of understanding, we can begin the formal practice of expanding the circle of loving kindness. We start where we are strong, with the warmth we have cultivated for ourselves. Bringing your hand back to your heart, silently repeat your own wishes for a moment. May I be safe. May I be happy. Feel this warmth filling you. Now, bring to mind a benefactor, a dear friend, a family member, a teacher, someone who has shown you kindness. Picture them clearly in your mind's eye. See their face, their smile, and just as you offered these wishes to yourself, now extend them to this person. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Allow your heart to naturally extend its warmth to them. There is no scarcity of kindness. The more you give, the more you have. Next, bring to mind a neutral person, someone you see regularly, but for whom you have no strong feelings. A cashier at the grocery store, a person you pass on your daily walk. We so often treat these people as part of the scenery, not as complex human beings with their own hopes and fears. Now, see them as a person, just like you, and offer them the same wishes from your heart. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. In this simple act, you are counteracting the habit of indifference and recognizing the shared humanity that connects you. Now comes the most challenging and perhaps most transformative step. Gently bring to mind someone you find difficult, someone with whom you have a conflict, or for whom you feel resentment. Be courageous and be gentle. First, just acknowledge whatever feelings arise in you: anger, hurt, sadness. Embrace these feelings with mindfulness, as you have learned. Then, holding this person in your mind and remembering the truth that their harmful actions likely come from their own deep suffering. See if you can offer them a simple wish of metta. If "may you be happy" is too difficult, you can modify it. You might try, "to the best of my ability, I wish for you to be free from the suffering that causes you to act in this way," or simply, "may you find peace." This is not about forcing a feeling or condoning their actions. It is a quiet, radical act of freeing your own heart from the poison of hatred. You are putting down the hot coal of resentment, not for them, but for you. Finally, you let your heart expand outward in all directions. Imagine this warmth, this light of loving kindness, radiating from you and touching all beings everywhere, without exception. Friends, enemies, humans, animals, all beings in all realms. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. In this moment, your personal wish for happiness has merged with the universal aspiration for the well-being of all life. The power of this unconditional compassion is not a naive fantasy. It is a force capable of profound transformation. The story of the Buddha and the murderer Angulimala illustrates this perfectly. Angulimala was a terrifying bandit who haunted the forests, murdering travelers and collecting a finger from each to wear as a gruesome garland around his neck. Everyone feared him. One day, the Buddha, calmly and mindfully, began walking down the road that led into Angulimala's forest. People warned him, but he continued. Angulimala saw him and was delighted a lone monk would be an easy victim. He began to run after the Buddha, but a strange thing happened. Though the Buddha was only walking at a normal pace, Angulimala, running as fast as he could not catch up. Exhausted and confused, he yelled out, "Stop, monk! Stop!" The Buddha, still walking calmly, turned his head and replied with a clear, peaceful voice, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." Angulimala was stunned. He asked what the Buddha meant. The Buddha explained, "I have stopped forever from doing harm to any living being. I have laid down the sword. You are still running, still caught in the endless cycle of violence and hatred, causing suffering for others and for yourself." In that moment, faced not with fear or violence, but with the unshakable peace and unconditional compassion of an awakened being, Angulimala's entire world shattered. The sheer power of the Buddha's metta disarmed him completely. He threw down his weapons, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and in time became a monk himself, transforming his life of hatred into one of peace. This story teaches us that compassion is not weakness. It is a profound and courageous strength, and its greatest benefit is for the one who practices it. To hold on to anger and resentment is to carry a heavy, burning stone, hoping to one day throw it at your enemy. But all the while, it is your own hands that are being scorched. The practice of metta is the act of gently putting that stone down. It is the liberation of your own heart from the prison of bitterness. It fills you with a deep sense of peace and connection, allowing you to see the world not as a collection of threats, but as a vast family of beings, all, like you, just trying to find their way home. This compassionate understanding of our interconnectedness now gives us the perfect lens to look anew at the universal law of action and consequence, the often misunderstood principle of karma. Having learned to open our hearts, first to ourselves and then to all others, we begin to feel the profound truth of our interconnectedness. We see that the well-being of one is tied to the well-being of all. This understanding of interbeing and compassion provides us with a new, much wiser lens through which to view one of the most powerful and misunderstood laws of the universe, the law of karma. In the West, the word karma has often been simplified, distorted into a kind of cosmic bookkeeping, a system of divine rewards and punishments, or a synonym for inescapable fate. We hear people say, "He got what was coming to him, it's his karma," or "I guess it's just my karma to suffer." These interpretations, rooted in fear and fatalism, are a shadow of the brilliant, empowering truth the Buddha actually taught. To understand karma correctly, we must begin by returning to the word itself. In the ancient language of Sanskrit, karma literally means action or deed. It is not a cosmic judgment handed down from on high. It is the universal, impersonal law of cause and effect. It is a natural law, as fundamental as gravity. If you release an apple from your hand, it will fall to the ground. That is gravity. If you plant a mango seed, you will, under the right conditions, get a mango tree, not a lemon tree. That is the law of agriculture. Karma is this same natural law applied to our intentional actions. It states, simply, that every intentional action we perform has a consequence. Our actions are seeds, and the lives we experience are the fruit that grows from those seeds. The most crucial element in this teaching, the part that makes it so revolutionary and psychological, is the Buddha's emphasis on intention. He said, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma. Having intended, one acts through body, speech, and mind." This means the moral weight of an action lies not in the action itself, nor even in its result, but in the volition, the will, the cetana that motivated it. Imagine you are walking down a path and you accidentally trip someone. They fall and are hurt. This is unfortunate, but it does not create negative karmic residue because there was no intention to harm. Now, imagine you see someone you dislike and you intentionally stick out your foot to trip them. The physical action is identical, but the intention is worlds apart. It is this second act, born of a will to harm, that plants a powerful and painful karmic seed. This law operates through three gateways: our body, our speech, and most importantly, our mind. The actions of our body, an act of violence or an act of generosity, are clear to see. The actions of our speech, a harsh word that wounds or a kind word that heals, are also potent seeds. But the most subtle, constant, and powerful karmic seeds are planted in the mind. Every thought that arises is a form of karma. A fleeting thought of anger, even if we don't act on it, plants a tiny seed of anger in the soil of our consciousness, making it just a little bit easier for anger to arise in the future. A thought of resentment, rehearsed over and over, carves a deep groove in our mind, making resentment our default reaction. Conversely, a thought of generosity, a silent wish for another's well-being, a moment of gratitude, each of these plants a wholesome seed, making kindness and peace more accessible to us. Our mind is a garden, and our thoughts are the seeds we are constantly, whether we know it or not, sowing within it. We are, in every moment, the creators of our future selves. This understanding liberates us from the simplistic, dualistic idea of good karma and bad karma. That way of thinking can lead to a kind of spiritual consumerism, where we try to perform good deeds in order to accumulate merit points, hoping to cash them in for a better future. The Buddhist perspective is less about morality and more about skillfulness. The terms used are kusala, meaning skillful or wholesome, and akusala, meaning unskillful or unwholesome. What makes an action skillful or unskillful? The answer lies in its roots. Unskillful, akusala, actions are any intentions of body, speech, or mind that are rooted in what are known as the three poisons. Greed, which is the energy of craving and grasping. Hatred, which is the energy of aversion, anger, and ill will. And delusion, which is the fundamental ignorance of the way things truly are, the ignorance of impermanence, suffering, and interbeing. Any action motivated by these three poisons is like planting a thorn bush. It will inevitably produce thorns of suffering, both for ourselves and for others. Skillful, kusala, actions are those rooted in the opposites of the three poisons. They are actions motivated by generosity and non-attachment, by loving, kindness and compassion, and by wisdom and clarity. Any action motivated by these wholesome roots is like planting a fruit tree. It will, in time, produce the fruits of happiness, peace, and liberation for ourselves and all those we touch. The path is not about being a good person to earn a reward. It is the practical, pragmatic training of learning to distinguish between what is skillful for ending suffering and what is unskillful, and choosing the skillful path again and again. However, The web of cause and effect is incredibly complex. The fruits of our actions do not always ripen immediately, or in ways we can predict. There is a famous Taoist story that illustrates this with profound simplicity. An old farmer lived in a poor village. He had one prized possession, a beautiful horse. One day, the horse ran away. All the neighbors came to console him. "Such bad luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" A few weeks later, the horse returned, bringing with it a herd of wild horses. The neighbors gathered again, this time to congratulate him. "Such good luck," they exclaimed. The farmer replied, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" The next day, the farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came again. "Oh, what terrible luck," they said with pity. The farmer just looked at them and said, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" A week later, the emperor's army marched into the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a war they would likely not survive. The farmer's son, because of his broken leg, was the only young man left behind. This story teaches a vital lesson about karma. We often judge events as good or bad based on a very limited, short-term perspective. The universe, however, operates on a much grander timescale. The ripples from a single action spread out in ways we can never fully anticipate. Therefore, the wise person focuses less on trying to manipulate outcomes, which are ultimately beyond our control, and more on tending to the one thing we can control, the quality of the intention in the present moment. We focus on the quality of the seed we are planting, right here and now, and we trust the great laws of nature to take care of the harvest in its own time. This is where the teaching of karma becomes the ultimate teaching of hope and empowerment. Many people fear karma as a heavy, deterministic weight, a life sentence handed down because of actions in a distant past. This is a complete misreading. The past is gone. Its effects, its karmic ripples, may continue to influence our present reality, but the past itself is like the wake behind a boat. It shows where we have been, but it does not steer our vessel now. The power to steer is always in the present moment. The garden of your mind may be full of weeds and thorns planted by years of habitual, unskillful thinking and acting. You cannot go back in time and unplant them. But in this moment, you are standing in your garden and your hands are full of new seeds. You have the choice, right now, to plant a seed of patience instead of a seed of anger. You have the choice to plant a seed of generosity instead of a seed of greed. You have the choice to plant a seed of understanding instead of a seed of judgment. This is the power of the present moment. This is your freedom. As you consciously and consistently choose to plant these wholesome, kusala seeds, something wonderful begins to happen. They sprout, they grow into strong, healthy plants, and these new plants of compassion, wisdom, and peace will naturally begin to crowd out the old weeds. Their leaves will block out the sunlight the thorns need to thrive. Over time, the entire landscape of your mind, and therefore your life, is transformed. You do not change by fighting the past, but by cultivating a different present. This is the true foundation of an unshakable self-worth. Your value is not a static noun, a thing determined by your past actions or the opinions of others. Your value becomes a dynamic verb. It is a quality that you actively create and embody in every moment of choice. Every time you choose the skillful over the unskillful, every time you choose kindness over cruelty, you are affirming your own worth. You are living in a way that generates self-respect, a respect that is not dependent on anything external. You become the gardener of your own beautiful life. This profound understanding of our own creative power Our responsibility as the gardener of our own karma naturally causes us to look at the environment in which our garden grows. We see that we have the power to act skillfully. But how do we maintain this skillfulness in a world that constantly presents us with temptation? A world that aggressively tries to sell us a vision of happiness based not on inner cultivation, but on outer acquisition. This brings us face to face with the pervasive challenge of materialism. We have learned that we are the gardeners of our own minds, that the quality of our intentions, our karma, is the seed that creates the reality we experience. With this empowering knowledge, we understand that the key to our happiness lies within our own hands. And yet, when we turn to face the world, we find that our inner garden is situated in the middle of a vast, dazzling, and deafeningly loud marketplace. This marketplace is the culture of modern materialism, and it has a very different philosophy. It shouts at us from every screen, every billboard, every magazine, with a single, seductive message. Happiness is not to be cultivated within. It is to be purchased from one of its stalls. This promise is one of the most powerful forces shaping our world. It tells us that our identity can be bought. The right car will make you powerful. The right watch will make you sophisticated. The right clothes will make you desirable. It tells us that security can be bought. A large enough bank account, a big enough house, and you will be safe from the chaos of life. And most importantly, it tells us that joy itself is a commodity. This vacation, this gadget, this experience will deliver the happiness you seek. We are born into this story. We swim in its waters, and we absorb its message so deeply that we rarely stop to question whether it is true. We spend our lives striving to acquire the things that we are told will finally make us feel whole, worthy, and content. But the wisdom of the inner life reveals that this path, the path of seeking happiness through outer acquisition, is a beautiful and well-lit road that ultimately leads nowhere. The reason for this lies in a simple psychological trap known as the hedonic treadmill. Our brains are wired for adaptation. When we acquire something new, a new phone, a larger home, a pay raise, there is an initial surge of pleasure, a spike of happiness. We think, this is it, I've arrived. But very quickly, our baseline of what feels normal resets to this new level. The new phone just becomes my phone. The bigger house just becomes the house. The pleasure fades, and we find ourselves back where we started, but now with a new, higher set of expectations. To get that same jolt of happiness, we now need something even bigger, better, and more expensive. It is like trying to quench a thirst by drinking salt water. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. Materialism is the physical manifestation of tanha, the insatiable thirst that can never be satisfied. It is a game designed to have no finish line, ensuring we are always running, always striving, and never at peace. This inner trap is magnified by an outer poison, the poison of social comparison. The engine of consumer culture runs on our insecurity. Advertising rarely works by showing us the intrinsic quality of a product. It works by showing us an image of a person who is happier, more beautiful, or more successful than we are, and then associating that feeling with their product. It manufactures a sense of lack. We see the curated lives of others online, their perfect homes and exotic travels, and the ego's measuring stick immediately comes out. We compare our life, our possessions, our very being to these idealized images, and we inevitably find ourselves wanting. This creates a perpetual state of envy and dissatisfaction, no matter how much we actually possess. There will always be someone with a newer car, a bigger house, a more glamorous life. The system of materialism guarantees that as long as we are playing its game of comparison, we will always feel that we are not quite enough. The path to freedom lies not in winning this unwinnable game, but in refusing to play it. It lies in understanding that true, lasting happiness, what the Buddhist tradition calls sukha, is not found in anything we can acquire. Sukha is a deep and abiding well-being, a contentment that comes not from the thrill of getting something new, but from a state of inner peace. It arises from a mind that is no longer agitated by the constant fever of craving. It is the peace of wanting what you already have. This true happiness is cultivated from sources that the marketplace can never sell. It comes from the joy of generosity, the simple, profound pleasure of giving without expecting anything in return. To give is to affirm our own abundance and connection, the direct antidote to the scarcity and separation that materialism breeds. It comes from nurturing meaningful relationships, from the warmth of genuine friendship, the depth of familial love, and the support of a community treasures of the heart that have no price tag. And it comes from contentment, the radical and countercultural act of saying, "This is enough. I have enough. I am enough." This is not a state of passive resignation. It is a state of profound and powerful peace, the peace of stepping off the frantic, exhausting treadmill for good. There is an ancient story that captures this truth with beautiful clarity. A great king who possessed vast kingdoms, mountains of gold, and palaces filled with every imaginable luxury, found himself plagued by a deep and persistent unhappiness. He summoned his advisors and asked them to find the secret to happiness. They could not help him. He then heard stories of a wise hermit who lived a life of utter simplicity in a cave in the mountains. The king, dressed in his finest silks and jewels, made the long journey to find this sage. He found the hermit sitting at the mouth of his cave, wearing nothing but a simple cloth, his only possessions a wooden bowl and a walking stick. "Oh, wise one," the king boomed, "I am a great and powerful king, yet I am miserable. You have nothing, yet you seem to be filled with peace. I command you to tell me the secret of your happiness." The hermit smiled, his eyes full of a clear and gentle light. He looked at the king and asked a simple question. "Your Majesty, what is it that you lack?" The king was taken aback. He began to list all the things he still wanted: a rival kingdom he wished to conquer, a larger palace, a faster horse. The list went on. When he was finished, the king looked at the hermit and asked, "And you? What is it that you lack?" The hermit held up his empty bowl, looked at the sky, and said with a gentle laugh, "I lack nothing at all." The king suddenly understood. Happiness was not about the quantity of his possessions. It was about the quantity of his desires. The hermit was the richer man, not because he had more, but because he wanted less. We can bring this wisdom into our own lives by cultivating the practice of mindful consumption. This is not about vowing to live in a cave, but about bringing our awareness and our deepest values to the act of buying and consuming. It is about transforming a mindless habit into a conscious choice. Before you buy something, you can pause and ask yourself a few simple questions. First, why am I buying this? Am I fulfilling a genuine need for food, shelter, or a necessary tool? Or am I acting out of boredom, insecurity, or the desire to impress someone? Am I trying to soothe an inner pain with an outer purchase? Second, you can ask, what is the karma of this item? Where did it come from? Who made it? Was their labor respected? What was the cost to the planet, to the water, to the air? In asking this, You are practicing the wisdom of interbeing, recognizing that no object exists in isolation. It is connected to a vast web of causes and conditions, and you are choosing to participate in that web. And third, you can ask, will this truly lead to lasting well-being? Will this object bring me a deeper sense of peace, connection, and freedom? Or will it simply provide a fleeting pleasure, soon to be replaced by the craving for something else, adding another layer of complexity and attachment to my life? By engaging in this simple, mindful inquiry, we transform our relationship with the material world. We move from being unconscious consumers to conscious participants in the web of life. We learn that true wealth is not the accumulation of things, but the cultivation of a mind that is free from the thirst for them. Releasing our attachment to these external possessions is a profound step toward liberation. It frees up an incredible amount of our energy, our time, and our attention. But there is another, even more subtle category of possessions we cling to: our inner possessions. We cling to our opinions, our identities, and most painfully, to the negative stories we tell ourselves about who we are. To find complete freedom, we must now learn the gentle art of letting these go as well. Having learned to practice karma with wisdom, to tend to our inner garden by planting skillful seeds, we see that the power to create a peaceful life resides within us. We have also seen the futility of seeking this peace in the external world of material possessions. This leads us to a profound and essential spiritual art, one that is perhaps the most direct path to the freedom we seek. It is the art of letting go. Our suffering, as we have seen, comes from clinging, from making a tight fist around things that are by nature impermanent. We clench our fists around pleasure, around people, around ideas, around who we think we are. We walk through life with our minds and hearts in a state of constant tension, a state of holding on. This clenching requires an immense and exhausting amount of energy. The art of letting go, sometimes called renunciation, is not a passive act of failure or apathy. It is not giving up on life. It is the brave, wise, and deeply compassionate act of consciously unclenching the fist. It is the strength to release our grip, to open our hand to the flow of reality, and to finally allow ourselves to be at ease. We can begin by learning to let go of the past. The past is a country to which we can never return, yet we spend so much of our precious, present moment energy living there. We are haunted by its ghosts. We cling to it in two primary ways: through regret and through resentment. Regret is the prison of if only. We endlessly replay a past mistake, a moment of failure, a clumsy word. We torture ourselves with alternate scenarios, imagining how much better life would be if only we had acted differently. This is a profound form of self-inflicted suffering. It is a form of clinging to a phantom, a ghost of a past that no longer exists. While it is wise to learn from our mistakes and to make amends where we can, to remain trapped in the story of regret is to plant new, unskillful seeds of suffering in the present moment. Letting go of regret means accepting that the past is complete. It cannot be changed. We honor the lessons it taught us. We forgive ourselves for the ignorance in which we acted, and we gently but firmly return our attention to the only time we can actually live, right now. Even more toxic is the burden of resentment, the act of clinging to the ways in which others have harmed us. We hold on to grievances like precious, painful treasures. We replay the hurtful words. We remember the betrayal. We stoke the fires of our anger, believing that our resentment is somehow punishing the other person. But the truth is, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. To carry a grievance is to willingly drink a vial of poison every day, and expect the other person to die. The person who harmed you may be long gone, living their life, completely unaware of the turmoil you are putting yourself through. You are the only prisoner in the jail of your own resentment. Letting go of a grievance is therefore one of the most profound acts of self-love you can perform. It is not about condoning the other person's harmful action. It is not about saying, "What you did was okay." It is not even about forgiving them for their sake. It is about choosing your own freedom. It is about deciding that your own inner peace is more valuable than your attachment to being right or your need for justice. It is the courageous act of putting down the hot coal, not because they deserve it, but because your hands deserve not to be burned. There is a classic Zen story that speaks directly to this human tendency to carry what is already over. Two monks, one older and one younger, were on a long journey. They came to a river where the ford was flooded, the water rushing and muddy. A beautiful young woman in fine clothes stood there, afraid to cross, as she would ruin her garments. Without a word, the older, senior monk walked up to her, lifted her into his arms, carried her across the turbulent river, and set her down gently on the other side. He then continued his journey. The younger monk was utterly scandalized. He followed behind his master, fuming in silence. His mind was a storm of judgment. How could he do that? He thought. We monks are bound by strict vows. We are not to touch a woman. This is a serious violation. How could he be so undisciplined? For hours, as they walked, he stewed in his righteous anger, replaying the scene over and over in his mind. Finally, as evening approached, he could bear it no longer. He burst out, "Master, I must speak to you. I am deeply troubled. Back at the river, you broke our sacred vows. You touched that woman. You carried her." The old monk looked at his young companion, his eyes full of a calm, gentle surprise. He replied softly, "My brother, I left that woman by the riverbank this morning. Are you still carrying her?" This story so perfectly illustrates our condition. We carry the burdens of the past regrets, our resentments, our judgments long after the events themselves are over. We are the young monk, allowing the landscape of our present moment to be poisoned by a memory. Letting go is the simple, powerful act of realizing we can put the woman down. We can leave her by the river where she belongs. Just as we cling to the past, we also cling to the future. We live in a state of chronic anxiety, our minds constantly projecting forward, trying to control a time that does not yet exist. We create endless what-if scenarios, imagining potential disasters, rehearsing for conversations that may never happen, and trying to secure a future that is, by its very nature, as part of the impermanent flow, fundamentally insecure. This is the ego's desperate attempt to find solid ground in the river of anicca. It fears the unknown and believes that if it can just worry enough, plan enough, and control enough, it can protect itself from harm. But this is an illusion. All this mental activity does is rob us of the joy and reality of the present moment. Letting go of anxiety is the practice of consciously relinquishing this illusion of control. It is the practice of trusting in our own capacity to meet life as it unfolds, moment by moment. It is the wisdom of realizing that we cannot control the weather of the future, but we can learn to be a sturdy and peaceful shelter in the present. A more subtle form of clinging to the future is our attachment to being right. In conversations, in disagreements, we defend our opinions as if we were defending our very lives. We argue, we become defensive, we try to prove the other person wrong. Why? Because the ego identifies with our beliefs. To have our opinion challenged feels like a personal attack. To be wrong feels like a small death for the ego. Letting go of the need to be right is a profound spiritual practice. It is the humility to listen, the willingness to see another perspective, and the wisdom to prioritize connection over a hollow victory. It is understanding that your self-worth is not tied to the rightness of your opinions. It is choosing peace over the stressful conflict of the ego. Ultimately, the deepest practice of letting go is to release our attachment to who we think we are. We cling so tightly to our identities. We build a story of me made up of labels. I am a successful person. I am an anxious person. I am a creative person. I am a victim of my past. We cling to these identities, even the painful ones, because they give us a sense of solidity, a sense of self, but they are also prisons. If you cling to the identity of successful person, you live in constant fear of failure. If you cling to the identity of anxious person, you close yourself off from the possibility of peace. If you cling to the identity of victim, you deny your own power to change your present. Letting go of these fixed identities is to embrace the truth of anatta. It is to allow yourself to be a fluid process, not a fixed object. It is to step out of the narrow box of your own story and into the vast, open mystery of your true being. You are not the label. You are the awareness that is aware of the label. To let go is to create space. Imagine your life is a room, and you have filled it to the ceiling with old furniture you no longer need. It is cluttered with the heavy couches of past regrets, the sharp-edged tables of old resentments, and the dusty ornaments of outdated beliefs about yourself. The room is so full, there is no space to move, no space for light to enter, no space for anything new and beautiful to be brought in. Letting go is the courageous and liberating act of clearing out the room. With each grievance you release, with each worry about the future you set down, with each rigid identity you soften, you are creating more space, more peace, more freedom. This inner space is not an empty, sterile void. It is a space of pure potential. It is the silence in which you can finally hear the whispers of your own heart. And when the mind is no longer frantically clinging to what was or what might be, it can finally relax and open to what is. In this clear, open space, a new quality of awareness naturally begins to dawn, one that may have been obscured for years by the clutter of our clinging. We begin to notice the simple, profound, and ever-present gifts of our existence. This spaciousness is the fertile ground from which the beautiful flower of gratitude naturally blooms. In the vast, quiet space created by letting go, something remarkable begins to happen. When the mind is no longer frantically clenched around the regrets of the past or the anxieties of the future, it can finally settle. It can rest, and in this state of rest, it can begin to truly see what is here. In this present moment, we discover that the world we inhabit, a world we so often take for granted or see only through a lens of lack, is in fact overflowing with grace. The natural response of a heart that has been cleared of clutter is the gentle, beautiful, and profoundly healing energy of gratitude. Gratitude is not a naive or forced positivity. It is not about pretending that pain and difficulty do not exist. It is the conscious practice of shifting our attention. For most of our lives, our minds are conditioned to operate like Velcro for negative experiences and like Teflon for positive ones. A single criticism can occupy our thoughts for a whole day, while a dozen small moments of beauty pass by completely unnoticed. Gratitude is the skillful and intentional act of reversing this bias. It is the practice of training our minds to notice the countless gifts that are already present, gifts that are so fundamental to our existence that they have become invisible to us. The deepest foundation for gratitude is the wisdom of interbeing. When we look at our lives through this lens, we realize that almost nothing we have is truly of our own making. We are the recipients of a constant and overwhelming stream of generosity from the universe. Consider your very next breath. Inhale and feel the air fill your lungs. Where did this air come from? It is a gift, offered freely by the trees, the plankton, the entire respiratory system of planet Earth. You did not have to earn it or pay for it. It is simply given. Can you feel a flicker of gratitude for this simple, miraculous gift of the in-breath? Consider the water you drink. It has traveled through clouds and rivers, through soil and stone, a long and ancient journey to reach you. It is the lifeblood of the world, offered to you to sustain your own life. Think of the food you eat. As we have seen, a simple piece of bread contains the sun, the earth, the rain, the farmer, the baker. We are kept alive, day after day, by the labor and cooperation of countless beings, both human and non-human, most of whom we will never know. To see this is to be humbled. It is to realize that our life is not a solo performance, but a feast to which we have been invited, a feast prepared by the entire cosmos. To live in the light of interbeing is to walk through the world in a state of perpetual awe, realizing that we are constantly being supported, constantly being nourished, constantly being held by a web of life that is infinitely generous. We can cultivate this state of mind through simple, formal practices. One of the most powerful is keeping a gratitude journal. Each day, perhaps before you sleep, take a few moments to write down 3 to 5 things for which you are genuinely grateful. The key is to be specific and to focus on the small, everyday blessings. Instead of writing, "I'm grateful for my family," you might write, "I am grateful for the way my partner smiled at me this morning," or "I am grateful for the sound of my child's laughter." Instead of "I'm grateful for my home," you might write, "I am grateful for the feeling of my warm, comfortable bed after a long day." This practice trains the mind to actively scan for the good, rewiring our neural pathways away from the default negativity bias and toward an appreciation for what is present. We can also practice sensory gratitude, taking a moment to be thankful for the gift of sight, which allows us to see the colors of a sunset, the gift of hearing, which allows us to be moved by music, the gift of touch, which allows us to feel the warmth of a hug. There is a simple old story that speaks to the power of this shift in perspective. A man was walking to the village, his heart heavy with self-pity. He was poor, and his shoes were old and falling apart. He complained bitterly in his mind, "My life is so difficult. I don't even have a decent pair of shoes to wear." His entire world had shrunk to this single point of lack. His mind was completely consumed by the problem of his shoes. As he approached the village square, he saw another man sitting on the ground, basking in the sun. The man had a joyful, peaceful expression on his face, and as the complaining man drew closer, he saw that this man had no feet. In that instant, his entire reality shattered and rearranged itself. His self-pity vanished, replaced by a sudden, shocking wave of overwhelming gratitude. He looked down at his own tattered shoes and realized the profound truth. His problem was not that he had no shoes. His blessing was that he had feet. Gratitude is this shift in perspective. It is not about ignoring our problems or pretending they don't exist. It is about realizing the vast foundation of blessings upon which our problems rest. To have problems is a sign of being alive. To have relationship problems means you have people in your life to love. To have work problems means you have a job that provides for you. To have problems with your aging body means you have been given the gift of a long life. Gratitude allows us to hold our difficulties in a much larger, more compassionate context. This leads to one of the most advanced and transformative forms of the practice, finding gratitude for our difficulties themselves. This may seem impossible at first. How can we be grateful for pain, for loss, for failure? We can be grateful because these are our greatest teachers. A life of uninterrupted ease would produce a being who is shallow, weak, and without wisdom. It is the grit in the oyster that creates the pearl. It is the resistance in the gym that builds the muscle. And it is the challenges of our lives that cultivate our inner strength, our resilience, our compassion, and our wisdom. A painful heartbreak can teach us more about love than a dozen happy years. A professional failure can teach us the priceless lesson of humility. A serious illness can teach us to cherish every single moment of our health. Even the difficult people in our lives can be seen as our teachers. They are our unpaid Zen masters, expertly showing us exactly where our practice is weak, where our ego is still reactive, and where we still have work to do in cultivating patience and understanding. To be able to genuinely say thank you to a difficulty is to have reached a profound level of spiritual maturity. Finally, we can bring this practice of gratitude home to the most intimate things of all, our own body and mind. Just for a moment, offer a silent thank you to your body, exactly as it is right now. Not a future, idealized body, but this one. Thank your heart for beating tirelessly over 100,000 times a day without your ever having to ask. Thank your lungs for breathing, your legs for carrying you, your immune system for protecting you. This body, with all its aches, pains, and imperfections, is a biological miracle of unimaginable complexity. It is the precious vehicle that allows you to experience this world. It deserves your gratitude. And then, offer gratitude for your mind, exactly as it is. Thank it for its ability to think, to reason, to create, to remember. Even thank it for its ability to be aware of its own confusion. For this awareness is the very seed of wisdom. This mind, with all its frantic thoughts and turbulent emotions, is the very instrument of your potential liberation. It is precious beyond measure. When our hearts are filled with this kind of deep, pervasive gratitude, our entire orientation to the world changes. A person who feels entitled complains. A person who feels grateful gives thanks. This inner shift from a mindset of lack to one of quiet, joyful abundance naturally transforms how we interact with others. The words we choose, the way we hold ourselves, and most importantly, the way we listen, all begin to reflect this inner state of grace. A grateful heart is an open heart, and an open heart is ready to communicate in a way that creates connection, understanding, and peace. A heart that has been softened by letting go. A heart that has been filled with the light of gratitude no longer wishes to be an island. Having discovered the profound peace that comes from within, it naturally seeks to share that peace with the world. Our primary way of touching the world, of interacting with the hearts and minds of others, is through the miracle of communication. Every day, we engage in the sacred acts of listening and speaking. But for most of us, these acts are performed unconsciously, driven by the old habits of the ego. The next step in our journey is to transform our communication from an unconscious reaction into a conscious spiritual practice. It is to learn the twin arts of deep listening and loving speech. Let us first consider the act of listening. We spend a great deal of our lives ostensibly listening to others, but how often are we truly present? Our default mode is not to listen to understand. It is to listen in order to reply. When another person is speaking, our mind is usually a whirlwind of activity. We are judging what they are saying, comparing it to our own experiences, formulating our counter-argument, or impatiently waiting for a gap in the conversation so we can share our own story or offer our brilliant advice. This is not listening. This is the ego waiting for its turn on stage. It is a conversation between two monologues, not a true meeting of two hearts. Deep listening is a radical departure from this habit. It is the practice of offering another human being the rarest and most precious gift we have, our full, undivided, non-judgmental presence. The intention behind deep listening is not to fix, to advise, or to impress. The sole intention is to help the other person suffer less. It is one of the most powerful forms of compassion in action. The practice begins by consciously silencing our own inner commentator. We let go of the need to agree or disagree, to be right, to have an answer. We simply become a spacious, receptive vessel, an open and trusting space into which the other person can pour their heart. We listen not just with our ears, but with our entire body. We turn towards the person, we make gentle eye contact, we allow our posture to communicate a silent message of care and attention, and we listen for what is not being said. Beneath the surface story, beneath the words and the facts, there is always a deeper music of feeling. We listen for the pain, the fear, the hope, or the joy that the person is trying to express, perhaps without even being fully aware of it themselves. Often, what people need most is not a solution to their problem, but the profound healing that comes from feeling truly heard, from having their experience received and validated without judgment. To be a calm, loving witness to another person's pain is to offer them a sanctuary, a place where they can finally put down their own burdens. This kind of listening has the power to heal wounds, to dissolve misunderstandings, and to create a bond of deep and authentic connection. The other wing of this practice is loving speech. Just as our listening can be a source of healing, our words can be either medicine or poison. Every word we speak is a karmic seed, a thoughtless, harsh word. Once it leaves our lips, can lodge itself in another person's heart and cause pain for days or even years. And it plants a seed of cruelty in our own mind, strengthening that habit. A kind, encouraging, and timely word can lift someone's spirits, give them hope, and change the course of their day. And it plants a seed of compassion in our own heart, making it easier to be kind in the future. There is a powerful story that compares our words to arrows. Once an arrow is shot from a bow, it cannot be called back. It flies through the air and makes its impact, for good or for ill. Our words are just like this. Once spoken, they are out in the world, and we cannot erase their effect. This understanding fosters a deep sense of responsibility. It encourages us to pause, even for a millisecond, before we speak, and to consider the nature of the arrow we are about to release. The Buddhist path offers a very practical guide for this, a 4-part test for our speech, known as the practice of right speech, or samma, vacha. Before we speak, we can ask ourselves these 4 questions. First, is it true? This is the foundation. We commit ourselves to honesty, to letting go of exaggeration, gossip, and falsehoods that cause confusion and mistrust. Second, is it kind? This is a crucial filter. There are many things that may be true, but that do not need to be said, especially if they are likely to cause unnecessary pain. If we must speak a difficult truth, we look for a way to couch it in the language of gentleness and care. If we cannot find a kind way to say it, perhaps this is a time for a wise and compassionate silence. Third, we ask, Is it beneficial? Does this speech serve a wholesome purpose? Will it lead to greater understanding, to healing, to connection, to peace? Or will it simply serve our ego's need to vent, to blame, or to prove a point? We learn to abandon speech that is divisive, that sets one person against another, and to cultivate speech that builds bridges. And fourth, we ask, is this the right time and the right place? Even a statement that is true, kind, and beneficial can be unskillful if it is delivered at the wrong moment. We learn to be sensitive to the receptivity of the other person, to speak when our words are most likely to be truly heard and received in the spirit they are intended. To pass our speech through these four gates is a profound mindfulness practice that can transform our relationships and our world. Ultimately, these two practices, deep listening and loving speech, are the natural expression of a mind that understands interbeing. When we truly see that the other person is not separate from us, communication is no longer a strategic game between two competing egos. It becomes a dance of mutual care. We listen deeply to another because we recognize their suffering as our own. We know that their happiness contributes to the happiness of the world of which we are a part. We speak lovingly because we understand that to harm another with our words is, in a very real sense, to harm ourselves. It is like the left hand striking the right hand. The entire body feels the pain and is diminished by the act. When we speak and listen from a place of interbeing, our communication becomes a powerful tool for watering the seeds of joy, peace, and wisdom in ourselves and in others. Even with the most skillful communication and the best of intentions, however, we live in an imperfect world with other imperfect beings. We will inevitably encounter moments of friction, of disagreement, of opposing needs and views. The arts of deep listening and loving speech are the essential first steps in navigating these moments. But when gentle communication is not enough and conflict arises, we need to know how to face it without resorting to the old habits of fear and aggression. We must learn how to bring this same compassionate wisdom into the very heart of the storm. We have learned to communicate from a place of gratitude and interconnection, practicing the arts of deep listening and loving speech. These are the skills that build bridges between hearts and maintain peace in our daily relationships. And yet, life, in its infinite complexity, will inevitably present us with storms. No matter how skillful we become, we will encounter moments of disagreement, friction, and conflict. These are the moments that test the very foundation of our practice. Our culture often teaches us to meet conflict with aggression, to fight to win at all cost, with avoidance to flee from any hint of confrontation. Both of these reactions are rooted in fear. They are the primal instincts of an ego that feels threatened, terrified of being diminished, invalidated, or wrong. The Buddhist path offers a third way, a way of courage and wisdom. It does not promise a life free from storms, but it teaches us how to become skillful sailors who can navigate the turbulent waters, not just to survive the storm, but to harness its power for growth and transformation. The very first step in this practice is a radical reframing of our entire view of conflict. We are conditioned to see conflict as a disaster, a sign that something has gone horribly wrong. We see it as a battle to be won or a threat to be escaped. The wisdom path invites us to see conflict instead as an opportunity. It is a powerful, if uncomfortable, spotlight that illuminates exactly what is hidden in the shadows of our own hearts and in the heart of our relationships. It is a gift disguised as a challenge. When a conflict arises, It is an opportunity to see our own attachments with piercing clarity. The very thing that is causing us to feel anger or fear is the very thing to which we are clinging. Are we clinging to an opinion, to a specific outcome, to our need to be in control, to our image of ourselves as a good person? Conflict holds up a mercilessly honest mirror, showing us exactly where our freedom is constrained by our own attachments. It is also an opportunity to understand the other person on a much deeper level. The surface level of a conflict, the argument over money, chores, or politics, is rarely the real issue. The conflict is a window into the other person's suffering, their hidden fears, their unmet needs. By looking at conflict in this way, we shift from an adversarial stance to one of compassionate curiosity. The goal is no longer to win, but to understand. And finally, conflict is the ultimate testing ground for our practice. It is easy to be mindful and compassionate when everything is peaceful. But can we remain present when we are being triggered? Can we access our compassion when we feel attacked? Conflict is the fire that forges the steel of our wisdom. It shows us where our practice is strong and where we still have work to do. With this new understanding of conflict as an opportunity, we can begin to engage with it skillfully. The most critical, life-altering practice in any conflict situation is the cultivation of the sacred pause. When we are triggered by someone's words or actions, there is a physiological reaction. The amygdala, the primitive, emotional part of our brain, hijacks our system. It floods us with adrenaline and cortisol, preparing us for a fight or for flight. Our capacity for rational thought, located in the prefrontal cortex, is temporarily shut down. In this state, we are incapable of deep listening or loving speech. We are a bundle of raw, blind reaction. To act or speak from this place will almost always create more suffering. The sacred pause is the conscious, intentional act of creating a space between the trigger and our response. It is the moment where we reclaim our power from the primal brain and return it to our wise heart. The practice is simple, though not always easy. The moment you feel the signs of being triggered, the heat rising in your chest, the tightening of your jaw, the knot in your stomach, your mindfulness training kicks in. You simply recognize, I am being triggered. This recognition is itself a moment of freedom. Then, instead of lashing out, you immediately bring your full attention to your anchor. Feel your breath moving in and out of your body. Feel the solid ground beneath your feet. Consciously take 3 slow, deep breaths. This simple act is a powerful circuit breaker. It tells your nervous system that you are not, in fact, being chased by a tiger. It begins to calm the storm. If the situation is very heated, the wisest pause may be a physical one. You can learn to say, with as much calm as you can muster, I am feeling too angry to talk about this constructively right now. I value this relationship, and I want to understand you. Can we please take 10 minutes to cool down and then continue? This is not a cowardly retreat. It is an act of profound wisdom and care, preventing you from speaking words, from shooting arrows that you will later regret. The pause does not solve the conflict, but it creates the necessary inner space for a wise resolution to become possible. Once you have created this space, the real practice of transformation begins, and it starts by looking inward. Before you try to understand the other person, you must first understand your own fire. With a compassionate curiosity, you can ask your anger, "Hello, my old friend. I see you are here with great energy. What is it you are trying to protect?" Anger is almost always a secondary emotion, a protective shield for something more vulnerable underneath. Look beneath the surface of your anger and you will almost always find fear or hurt. Perhaps you are afraid of losing control. Perhaps you are afraid of being disrespected or abandoned. Perhaps your feeling of self-worth has been wounded. To see this is to understand the second arrow parable in action. The other person's action was the first arrow. It caused a wound of hurt or fear. Your angry reaction is the second arrow you are shooting into that very same wound. The practice here is to bypass the anger and tend directly to the vulnerable feeling beneath it. You can put a hand on your heart and offer yourself the same compassion you have learned to cultivate. I know you are feeling hurt. I know you are scared. I am here. I will take care of you. When you can do this, you disidentify from the anger. You are no longer an angry person. You are a wise and caring being who is holding a part of themselves that is experiencing anger, which is fueled by pain. This creates a foundation of inner stability and peace. From this calmer, more compassionate inner place, you can now turn your attention to the other person. You can begin to investigate their fire. Using your understanding of interbeing, you can ask, what might be the source of their suffering? What fear or hurt might be driving their unskillful actions? What attachments are being threatened for them? When you re-engage in the conversation, you do so not with a sword, but with an open hand. You practice deep listening, not to gather ammunition for your rebuttal, but to genuinely understand their experience. You might say things like, "Help me understand what you are feeling," or "It sounds like you felt completely unheard in that moment. Is that right?" This kind of listening validates their feelings, which de-escalates the conflict, as people are most aggressive when they feel unheard. And you practice loving speech, speaking from your own vulnerable experience, rather than from a place of accusation. Instead of saying, "You are so inconsiderate," which invites defensiveness, you can say, "When this happens, I feel unimportant and hurt." This invites empathy. The goal of the conversation shifts entirely. It is no longer about proving who is right and who is wrong. It becomes a collaborative search for a solution that honors the feelings and addresses the unmet needs of both people. There is a powerful parable about the difference between rigidity and flexibility in a storm. In a great windstorm, a mighty oak tree stands tall and proud. It resists the wind with all its immense strength. It is a symbol of rigidity and unyielding power. Next to it grows a slender stalk of bamboo. As the wind howls, the bamboo bends, yielding to the force, sometimes touching the very ground. It does not resist. It flows with the energy of the storm. When the storm finally passes, the mighty oak, for all its strength, lies broken on the ground, its trunk snapped in two by its own resistance. The flexible bamboo, however, simply springs back up, green and unharmed. In a conflict, our ego wants us to be the oak, tree-rigid, unbending, attached to our position, determined to be right. But this rigidity is a path to being broken. The wisdom of this path teaches us to be like the bamboo toe, be flexible, to be willing to listen, to yield, to bend. This flexibility is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength, the strength that preserves connection and allows for peace to re-emerge. To cultivate this kind of flexibility, this ability to bend without breaking in the storms of life, we need a deep taproot. We need a source of profound inner nourishment and stability. We cannot be flexible if our core is brittle and dry. We need to know how to retreat, not from the world, but into a place within ourselves that is untouched by the howling winds of conflict and chaos. We need to discover the deep, restorative power of inner silence, the quiet ground of our being, where we can gather our strength, remember who we are, and find our unshakable center. We have learned to navigate the storms of conflict with the flexibility of bamboo, bending with wisdom and compassion, rather than breaking with the rigidity of the ego. This ability to remain graceful under pressure, to respond rather than react, requires a deep and reliable source of inner strength. It requires a place within us that is calm and centered, a place we can retreat to, not to escape the world, but to gather our energy and remember our true nature. In our modern age, however, accessing this inner sanctum has become more difficult than ever before, because we are living in a constant state of noise. This is the next great challenge we must face, the challenge of finding silence in the midst of the ceaseless noise of contemporary life. The noise we speak of is not just auditory. It is not just the sound of traffic, of construction, of televisions and telephones. This outer noise is merely a symptom of a much deeper and more pervasive inner noise. We are living in an age of perpetual input, a culture of constant distraction. From the moment we wake to the moment we sleep, we are bombarded with a relentless stream of information and stimulation. Our phones buzz with notifications. Our feeds scroll with endless updates. Our minds are saturated with news cycles, podcasts, advertisements, and the curated lives of others. We have become compulsive consumers of content, believing that to be bored, to be still, to be without stimulation, is a kind of failure. This constant onslaught of external noise creates a deafening internal chatter. It keeps our minds in a state of perpetual agitation, skimming from one topic to the next, never resting, never diving deep. We have lost the art of being alone with ourselves. In fact, we have become afraid of it. We use the noise of the world to drown out the whispers of our own hearts. We are afraid of what we might find in the silence, our loneliness, our fears, our unresolved pain. And so we keep consuming, keep scrolling, keep listening, running from the very inner space where our healing and freedom lie. The path to wisdom, therefore, requires a courageous turning in the opposite direction. It requires that we consciously and intentionally create islands of silence in the noisy ocean of our lives. We begin by cultivating external silence. This is the practice of creating a physical environment that is conducive to inner peace. It means making conscious choices about the sounds and stimuli we allow into our lives. You can start with small, simple acts. You can schedule periods of digital detox into your day and hour in the evening, where all screens are turned off. You can disable all non-essential notifications on your phone, reclaiming your attention from the corporations that seek to monetize it. You can create sacred spaces in your home, perhaps making the bedroom a technology-free zone, a place reserved only for rest and intimacy. You can also seek out the profound silence of the natural world. Make a habit of walking in a park, a forest, or by a body of water. Here, you will discover that not all silence is the same. The silence of nature is not an empty void. It is a living silence, full of the subtle, wholesome sounds of the wind in the trees, the calls of birds, the gentle lapping of water. To immerse yourself in this natural quiet is a powerful form of therapy for a mind agitated by the artificial noise of the human world. It recalibrates your nervous system and reminds you of a deeper, more organic rhythm. The most radical practice of all, in our busy world, is to simply do nothing. To sit in a chair for 5 or 10 minutes without a book, without music, without a podcast, without a task, to just sit, to just be. This practice of creating external silence is the essential first step. It is like preparing a clean, quiet room. But once the room is prepared, we must then deal with the noise we have brought inside with us, the endless chatter of our own minds. This is the practice of cultivating internal silence. Even in a soundproof room, the mind can be like a chaotic marketplace, with thoughts shouting over one another, vying for our attention. This is the monkey mind of Buddhist psychology, swinging restlessly from branch to branch, from past to future, from worry to desire. We cannot force this monkey mind to be silent. If we try to shout it down, it will only become more agitated. The practice of meditation is not about fighting the noise. It is about creating the conditions for the noise to settle down on its own. There is a beautiful parable that illustrates this. A young seeker went to a wise old master and said, "I wish to see the truth. I wish to see reality clearly." The master led the seeker to the edge of a mountain lake. The wind was blowing, and the surface of the lake was choppy, full of waves and ripples. The master said, "Look into the lake and tell me what you see." The seeker looked and replied, "I see nothing but the distorted, broken reflections of the sky and the trees. I cannot see clearly." The master then said, "Let us just sit here." They sat together in silence by the edge of the lake. They did not do anything. They simply sat. As time passed, the wind began to die down. The waves grew smaller, and the ripples began to cease. Finally, the lake became perfectly still, its surface as smooth and clear as a flawless mirror. "Now look," the master said. The seeker looked into the lake and gasped. He could now see a perfect, crystal clear reflection of the entire vast sky, the moon, and every single star, all in stunning detail. The master said, "The truth you seek was always here. It could not be seen only because your mind, like the lake, was disturbed. When the mind becomes still, the truth reflects itself. Our mind is this lake. The thoughts, the emotions, the inner chatter are the wind that creates the ripples, distorting our perception of reality. The practice of meditation, of sitting in silence and returning our attention again and again to the anchor of the breath, is the practice of letting the wind die down. We do not force the waves to be still. We create the conditions of patient, loving attention, and the stillness arises naturally. In this inner silence, we begin to hear. When the shouting of the ego and the constant demands of the world finally quiet down, we can begin to perceive the more subtle voices. We can hear the quiet whisper of our own heart, revealing our deepest longings, not for more possessions or more success, but for more connection, more love, more meaning. We can hear the voice of our own intuition, the deep knowing part of us that always knows the wisest path to take. We begin to hear the language of our own bodies, its messages of tension or ease, and in the deepest silence, we experience something even more profound. We begin to feel our connection to everything. The noise of our individual thoughts and stories is what creates the illusion of our separation. When that noise fades, the boundaries begin to dissolve. In a shared, deep silence with another person, we can feel a sense of communion that words could never create. In the silence of nature, we can feel our oneness with the trees and the sky. The silence is not empty, it is full of a presence, a sense of belonging to something much larger than our small separate selves. This profound, peaceful silence is more than just the absence of noise. It is the direct experience of the ground of our being. It is the canvas upon which the painting of our life appears. It is the vast open space of awareness itself. The great spiritual traditions have a word for this ultimate reality, a word that is often misunderstood as nothingness. This word is emptiness, but it is not the emptiness of a vacuum. It is the pregnant emptiness of the silent, still lake that has the capacity to hold the reflection of the entire universe. And it is to this liberating, ultimate truth that our journey now takes us. We have followed the path inward, from the noisy surface of our lives, into the profound, restorative quiet of inner silence. We have learned to sit by the still lake of the mind and witness the clear reflection of reality. This journey now brings us to the deepest chamber of understanding, to the ultimate insight that is the source of all spiritual liberation. It is a truth so profound that words can only point towards it, like a finger pointing at the moon. The finger is not the moon, and these words are not the truth, but they can guide our gaze. This is the wisdom of sunyata, a Sanskrit word most often translated as emptiness. This word, emptiness, can strike fear in the heart. It sounds like a cold, dark void, a nihilistic abyss of nothingness. The ego, which built its entire existence on being something, is terrified of becoming nothing. But this is a profound misunderstanding. The wisdom of emptiness is not a teaching of nothingness. It is the key that unlocks the secret of fullness. It is not an erasure of life, but the discovery of the very ground that makes life possible. To understand it is to attain the ultimate freedom. Let us return to our simple sheet of paper. We saw that the paper is full of the cloud, the sun, the forest, and the logger. We called this interbeing. Now, we will use the lens of sunyata to look even more deeply. What is the sheet of paper empty of? It is empty of one thing, and one thing only, a separate, independent, stand-alone existence. It is empty of being just paper. There is no intrinsic, essential paperness residing within it that is not dependent on the sun, the cloud, and the rain. Its existence is entirely contingent on all the non-paper elements. Now, here is the crucial insight. It is precisely because the paper is empty of a separate self that it can be full of the entire universe. Its emptiness of an isolated identity is the very condition that allows for its fullness of connection. Think of a ceramic bowl. What makes a bowl useful? It is the empty space inside it. If it were a solid block of clay, it would be useless for holding rice or water. The function of the bowl, its very bowlness, is defined by its emptiness. In the same way, the phenomena of the universe are like this bowl. Their nature is sunyata, an open, receptive emptiness that allows them to interact, to connect, and to contain one another. Emptiness is not a void, it is potential. It is the open space in which the dance of life, the dance of interbeing, can unfold. Now, let us turn this profound insight upon ourselves. What are you empty of? Through our investigation into anatta, we have already discovered the answer. You are empty of a fixed, permanent, separate self. There is no unchanging you that exists independently from your body, your thoughts, your feelings, and the entire web of conditions that support your life. You are, like the sheet of paper, empty of a standalone identity. For the ego, this sounds like a death sentence. But for the heart that seeks freedom, this is the best news we could ever hear. It is precisely because you are empty of a fixed self that you are free. If you were a solid, unchanging entity, like a marble statue, you could never change. You could never grow, never learn from your mistakes, never heal from your wounds. Your past would define you absolutely. Your present mood would be your eternal prison. But you are not a statue. You are a flowing river. You are a process. You are empty space. And because you are empty, you are filled with infinite potential. You have the capacity to change. The seeds of anger from your past do not have to define your future because you are empty of a permanent angry self. You can cultivate seeds of compassion. The story of your past trauma does not have to be your identity because you are empty of a permanent victim self. You can realize your own resilience and strength. This emptiness is not a lack. It is your fundamental freedom. It is the open sky of your awareness, which has the capacity to hold any cloud of thought or emotion without being stained or defined by it. The most celebrated and concise expression of this profound wisdom is found in a text called the Heart Sutra. In it, the great Bodhisattva of compassion, Avalokiteshvara, looks deeply into the nature of reality and declares its true nature. The most famous lines of the sutra state, "Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Form is not other than emptiness. Emptiness is not other than form." This sounds like a paradoxical riddle, but with our understanding, we can now unlock its meaning. Let us think of a wave on the ocean. The wave is the form. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has a shape, a height, a specific manifestation. But what is the wave's true nature? Its true nature is water. The wave is empty of being a separate, independent wave. It is entirely made of water. This is what form is emptiness means. The wave, form, is empty of a separate self. Then, the sutra says, emptiness is form. The water, emptiness, does not just remain as a flat, unmanifested potential. It rises and expresses itself as this particular wave. At this particular time, the potential becomes actual. The emptiness manifests as form. They are not two different things. The wave is just water waving. You are just the universe youing. You are the cosmos experiencing itself for a brief and beautiful time in this particular form. The Heart Sutra culminates in a great mantra, a series of sacred sounds said to contain the essence of this entire liberating wisdom. The mantra is Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisvaha. Gate means gone. It is the first step of letting go of our conventional understanding of reality, the world of separate selves and objects. Gate is repeated. Gone, gone. A deeper letting go, releasing our attachment to the subtle components of the ego, to our thoughts and feelings as being me. Paragate means gone beyond. It is the journey across the river of suffering to the other shore of peace, the shore of seeing the interconnected nature of all things. Parasamgate means completely, totally gone beyond. This is the ultimate liberation. It is the letting go of all concepts, all views, even the most subtle attachments to the ideas of enlightenment or emptiness themselves. It is to not be caught in any idea, but to rest in the dynamic, ungraspable, open nature of reality as it is. And finally, Bodhisvaha. This can be translated as awakening, so be it, or hail to the enlightenment. It is a joyful exclamation of arrival, a celebration of the freedom that comes from completely letting go. This ultimate wisdom of sunyata is not an abstract philosophy to be memorized or debated in a classroom. It is a lens through which to view our lives, a lens that dissolves fear and reveals freedom. It is the final solvent for the ego's rigid structures. It is the understanding that liberates us from the deepest attachments of all the attachment to our own ideas of who we are and what the world is. Armed with this profound view, this understanding that we are open, interconnected, and free processes rather than fixed, isolated objects, we can now turn back and look at the world of former work, our careers, our daily activities, and learn to engage with them in a way that is no longer a source of stress and suffering, but a joyful expression of our awakened nature. We have journeyed to the highest peaks of wisdom, gazing into the profound truths of emptiness and interbeing. We have seen that our true nature is not a fixed, separate self, but an open, flowing, and interconnected process. This ultimate view is not meant to be an escape from the world. It is not a ticket to leave the marketplace of life behind. Rather, it is a new map and a new compass, designed to help us navigate that very marketplace with a newfound sense of freedom, purpose, and grace. And there is no area of the marketplace more demanding, more stressful, and more in need of this wisdom than the world of our work, our livelihood. This is where we bring the practice down from the mountain and into the heart of our daily lives. For many of us, our work is the primary source of our dukkha, our suffering. It is a place of immense pressure, of relentless deadlines, of competition and comparison. We are encouraged to cultivate a work self, an ambitious, armored version of ourselves. And we live in a culture that glorifies the hustle, a state of perpetual, striving busyness. We often feel like cogs in a vast, impersonal machine, our creativity stifled, our well-being sacrificed for a bottom line. We work to earn money, to buy the things we are told will make us happy, only to find ourselves too exhausted and stressed to enjoy them. In this model, work is not a part of our spiritual life. It is often the very thing that seems to obstruct it, a domain where the ego reigns supreme and peace is impossible. The Buddhist path offers a radical alternative. It includes a practice called right livelihood, or samma ajiva, as an essential component of the Noble Eightfold Path to liberation. This teaches that our work, far from being an obstacle, can become one of the most fertile fields for our spiritual practice. It suggests that what we do to sustain our lives should be in harmony with our deepest values. Traditionally, this meant avoiding occupations that directly cause harm, such as trading in weapons, poisons, or engaging in deceit. In our modern, complex world, we can expand this to a deeper inquiry. We can ask ourselves, does my work cause harm to myself by forcing me into a state of chronic stress and burnout? Does it cause harm to others by creating products that are addictive or services that are exploitative? Does it cause harm to our planet by depleting resources and polluting our shared home? This ethical reflection is the starting point. But right livelihood is about more than just avoiding harm. It is about actively transforming our relationship to our work, regardless of what that work is. It is about understanding that our job is not just a way to get money, but a profound opportunity to practice, to grow, and to contribute. It is a primary field where we can consciously plant the skillful seeds of our karma. To begin this transformation, we must first redefine our concept of success. The world teaches us a very clear definition of success: more money, a more prestigious title, more power, more recognition. This is a definition created by and for the ego. It is a game of external accumulation that, as we have seen, can never lead to lasting contentment. A wisdom-based definition of success looks entirely different. It is measured not by what we get, but by the inner qualities we cultivate and the contribution we make. A new measure of success might ask, is my work bringing me a genuine sense of inner peace? Or is it a source of constant agitation? This does not mean the work will always be easy, but does it, on the whole, align with my core being? Another, more profound measure is contribution. Through the lens of Interbeing, we can ask, how is my work, no matter how humble it may seem, serving the whole? The software engineer writing code for an accounting program is helping small businesses function, supporting the livelihoods of many families. The barista who makes coffee with care and a kind word is offering a moment of warmth and pleasure that may change the course of someone's day. The person who cleans the floors of an office is creating a space of order and clarity that allows others to work peacefully. When we see our work in this interconnected context, no job is small. Every skillful act becomes a meaningful contribution to the web of life. And perhaps the most important measure of success is this: is my work a place where I can practice being a better human being? Is it a field where I can cultivate patience with difficult colleagues, honesty in my dealings, diligence in my efforts, and compassion for my customers and myself? Success, in this new light, is not a destination you arrive at when you get a corner office. It is a quality of being that you bring to every single moment of your work. With this new definition of success as our guide, we can begin to infuse our daily work life with the tools of our practice. We can bring mindfulness to the office. When you feel overwhelmed by a flood of emails and tasks, you can practice the mindful minute. Simply pause, turn away from your screen, and take 3 conscious breaths. Feel your feet on the floor. Come home to your body. This small act can reset your entire nervous system. You can practice single tasking. The modern myth of multitasking is a recipe for stress and sloppy work. Instead, you can choose to do one thing at a time with your full attention. When you are writing an email, just write the email. When you are in a meeting, just be in the meeting. This brings a quality of excellence and peace to your work. And you can practice mindful communication, applying the arts of deep listening and loving speech to your interactions with colleagues, clients, and superiors. We can bring compassion to the workplace. We can look at our colleagues not as competitors or as functions, but as fellow human beings, each with their own private struggles, fears, and aspirations. That difficult boss may be under immense pressure from their own superiors. That annoying colleague may be dealing with a painful situation at home. Seeing their humanity allows us to respond with kindness instead of irritation. We can even silently offer metaphrases to a person with whom we are having a conflict, wishing for them to be free from their own suffering. This practice can radically transform the emotional atmosphere of our workplace, and we can bring wisdom to our work. We can apply the insight of anicca, impermanence, to remember that this stressful project will end, this difficult quarter will pass, and this success will fade. This helps us to hold our work life more lightly, with less desperate clinging. We can apply the wisdom of anatta, no self, when we receive criticism. Instead of the ego reacting with a cry of, "I am being attacked," we can see the feedback as simply information in personal data that can help the process improve. It is not an indictment of our essential worth, and we can apply the wisdom of sunyata and interbeing by seeing our role, however seemingly insignificant, as completely interconnected with the whole. The person in the mailroom is as essential to the company's function as the CEO. Each part is empty of a separate identity, but full of the whole. This view dissolves feelings of unimportance and fosters a sense of collective purpose. There is a story told of a great and famous monastery. People would travel from all corners of the land to hear the profound philosophical teachings of the head abbot. One day, a sincere young seeker asked the abbot, "Master, who is the most enlightened person in this monastery?" The seeker expected him to point to one of the senior monks who were renowned for their deep meditation or their scholarly knowledge. Instead, the abbot gestured towards the courtyard, where a very old man was silently and methodically sweeping the fallen leaves. "That man," the abbot said, "is our greatest master." The seeker was confused. "But he is just the janitor. He never speaks in the lectures or leads the meditations." The abbot smiled. "That man came here 50 years ago. For 50 years, his only job has been to sweep this courtyard. He does not see it as a lowly chore. For him, sweeping is his path to awakening. With every stroke of the broom, He is sweeping away the dust from his own mind. He is completely present, with the sound of the bristles on the stone, with the feeling of the wind, with the sight of the leaves. He does his work with a silent, loving dedication that is a constant offering to this community. He doesn't want to be an abbot. He doesn't need any recognition. He has found complete freedom and perfect peace right here in the simple, humble act of sweeping. His title may be janitor, but his true work is enlightenment. And this story reveals the ultimate truth of right livelihood. It is not what you do that determines your peace and your worth. It is how you do it. You can be a CEO and be filled with a hell of stress and ego, or you can be a janitor and live in the heaven of a peaceful, present mind. Our self-worth is not derived from our job title or the size of our salary. It is derived from the quality of presence, compassion, and wisdom we bring to each moment of our work. By transforming our relationship to our livelihood, we dissolve the artificial barrier between our spiritual life and our real life. The path is no longer something we do for 20 minutes on a meditation cushion. The path becomes our very life. Every email, every meeting, every task becomes an opportunity to awaken. As we integrate this profound understanding into the very fabric of our being, from seeing through the ego to embracing our feelings, to transforming our work, we begin to arrive at a state of profound and gentle equanimity. We learn to move through the world not as a fighter, struggling against reality, but as a dancer, moving in harmony with it. We are coming home to our true nature. Our long journey together through the inner landscape of the heart and mind has now brought us to the threshold of home. We began in the quiet desperation of a sleepless night, feeling isolated and inadequate, a small, fragile self adrift in a vast and overwhelming world. We have walked a path of discovery since then. We have looked into the nature of that fragile self and found it to be a construct of thought. We have looked into the nature of our suffering and found its roots in our own clinging. We have seen the impermanent, flowing nature of all things, and we have opened our hearts with a compassion that extends first to ourselves and then to all beings. We have learned to let go, to be grateful, to communicate with wisdom, and to find purpose in our daily lives. And now, all of these streams of understanding converge into a great, peaceful river, which flows into the ocean of our true home. This is the practice of arriving, of resting, of finally being at peace in the world, just as we are. Let us be very clear about what this peace is. True peace, the peace that this path offers, is not the absence of problems. It is not a life where the seas are always calm and the skies are always clear. Life will continue to present us with challenges, with losses, with storms. There will still be moments of pain, of confusion, of difficulty. Peace is not the eradication of the waves. Peace is the discovery that you are the deep, vast, and silent ocean, which is untroubled by the waves on its surface. It is the cultivation of an inner stability, a spaciousness of heart so profound that you can hold the joys and the sorrows, the successes and the failures, the praise and the blame, all with a steady, loving, and unshakable equanimity. You no longer have to fight the waves. You no longer have to fear them. You can simply allow them to arise, to be, and to pass away, knowing that your true nature, the deep water of your being, remains untouched. To truly understand this, let us use the metaphor of the wave and the ocean. Imagine yourself as a single wave. You are born from the formless ocean. You rise up, taking on a unique shape and form. You have a certain height, a certain power, a certain speed. This is your life as an individual. It is your personality, your story, your unique journey. The ego, the separate self, identifies only with this form. It looks at other waves and compares itself. Am I as big as that wave? Am I as powerful? I hope I don't crash too soon. The ego is terrified of the end of its form, the moment it will crash upon the shore and cease to be a wave. For the ego, this is death, this is annihilation. But the wisdom of Interbeing offers a completely different perspective. It invites you to realize that you are not just the form of the wave. Your fundamental nature is the water. The wave is a temporary manifestation of the ocean, but its substance has always been and will always be the ocean itself. The water is never born, and the water never dies. It simply changes its form. When the wave crashes on the shore, is it a tragic death, or is it a joyful return? The form dissolves, but the essence, the water, simply rejoins the vastness of its true source. It has come home. There is no loss. There is only a transformation from one form to another. This is our life. We arise from the great ocean of being, the unmanifested ground of reality. We take on this precious human form for a short while. We dance, we struggle, we love, we learn, and then our form dissolves and we return to the great ocean. If we identify only with the form, with the ego, with this small separate self, then our lives will be defined by the fear of its dissolution. But if we can learn to identify with the water, with the vast, eternal, interconnected consciousness that is our true nature, then the fear of death begins to dissolve. It is replaced by a deep and abiding trust in the process of life. Think of a single drop of water. It rises from the ocean as mist. It becomes part of a cloud. It falls as rain upon a mountain. It trickles down, joining a stream, then a river, on a long and sometimes turbulent journey. All along this journey, the drop of water may have a sense of being a separate me on a difficult and lonely quest, striving to get somewhere. And then, finally, the river flows into the sea, and the drop merges with the boundless ocean. Is this moment an annihilation, or is it the ultimate homecoming? In that instant of merging, the drop realizes its true nature. It realizes, I was never separate. I was always the ocean. My entire journey was just the ocean's way of experiencing itself as a drop. Its small separate identity dissolves, not into nothingness, but into everythingness. This is our path. The journey of spiritual awakening is the journey of the drop of water returning home. The dissolution of the ego is not something to be feared. It is the moment we stop clinging to our small, separate, and suffering identity and awaken to the magnificent, boundless reality of who we truly are. We are the ocean of life, temporarily experiencing itself as this precious drop. And in this understanding, we find the final, unshakable foundation for our self-worth. We no longer need to ask, am I good enough? Is a small wave less worthy than a large wave? Is a gentle wave a failure compared to a powerful, crashing one? The question itself is meaningless. Each and every wave is a perfect and complete expression of the ocean in that moment. Its value is not in its size or its power, but in its very being, in its watery nature. So it is with you. Your worth is not measured by your accomplishments, your wealth, your appearance, or the opinions of others. Your worth is inherent, absolute, and immeasurable, because you are a perfect and necessary expression of the entire cosmos. The universe has unfolded for billions of years to manifest as you, right here, right now. Without you, the great dance of life would be incomplete. You are not just in the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself in human form. This value can never be earned, and it can never be taken away. And so, we arrive at our final destination, which is the place we started, but seen with new eyes. We arrive at this present moment, at this breath. The journey is complete. The work is to simply rest. Let go of all the words, all the concepts, all the analysis. Let these truths settle from your mind into your heart, into your very bones. Feel the reality of your interconnectedness. Feel the peace of your inherent worth. Feel the safety of your true nature, which is as vast and as eternal as the ocean itself. There is nothing more you need to do. There is nothing more you need to become. You are already whole. You are already home. And so, like a small child, held safely and lovingly in the arms of its mother, allow yourself to rest. Allow your mind to grow quiet. Allow your body to soften. Let go and sleep now in the deep, peaceful, and unshakable awareness of interbeing. You are safe. You are home. We began this journey together in the quiet darkness of a sleepless night, haunted by the question of our own worth. We felt ourselves to be small, separate, and incomplete. We have traveled far since then, not across continents, but through the inner landscapes of our own hearts and minds. We looked directly at the architecture of the ego and saw its inherent fragility. We faced the truth of suffering, not with despair, but with a compassionate desire to understand its roots. We walked through the flowing river of impermanence, and on its other shore, we discovered the liberating truths of no self and the profound, connective reality of interbeing. This has been a journey from the head to the heart, from a life of striving to a life of arriving, from the painful illusion of separation to the peaceful truth of our belonging. If there is one essential message to carry forth from our time together, let it be this: peace is not a destination you must struggle to reach. It is not a prize to be won after a long and arduous battle with the world. Peace is your natural state. It is the vast, silent, and ever-present sky of your own awareness. Your thoughts of inadequacy, your waves of anxiety, your storms of anger, these are merely clouds passing through the sky. For so long, we have believed we are the clouds, and so we have been tossed and turned by their turmoil. The entire practice is simply to remember that you are the sky. The clouds will come and go. The sky remains. And your worth, that thing you have been searching for so desperately, is not a project to be completed or a verdict to be earned. It is a reality to be discovered. It is not found in what you do or what you have. It is found in the simple, miraculous truth of what you are, a unique, precious, and inseparable expression of all that is. You now hold all the tools you will ever need. You do not need a special temple or a revered master. Your own breath is your teacher, always ready to guide you home to the present moment. Your own heart is your sanctuary, always capable of generating the warmth of compassion for yourself and for others. Your own wise, mindful attention is the key that unlocks every door. When you feel lost, when the noise of the world becomes deafening, and you begin to forget, the path is simple. Come back to your breath. Feel the solid earth beneath your feet. Look at a single leaf on a tree and see the entire universe within it. You have the map. You have the compass. The journey is now yours, to be walked with every step, with every breath of your beautiful, precious life. The path is always here. The door is always open. Welcome home.